clean clothes, a phone to call if something went wrong. But there wasn't extra. No allowance. No weekend trips. And when the charity drive began, Isaiah didn't bring anything. Not because he didn't want to, but because there was nothing extra to give. His mother had explained it to him once, years earlier, when he asked why they didn't go on vacation like other families. "We have what we need," she said. "And that's more than some people have." He understood. Or at least he thought he did. What he didn't understand was why it mattered to anyone else. The first comment came during lunch. Isaiah was sitting alone near the back of the cafeteria, the way he usually did. He had finished eating and was reading a book he'd borrowed from the library. A voice came from behind him. "Guess some people don't believe in charity." Isaiah didn't look up. He had learned over the months that looking up often made things worse. The voice belonged to someone older. A senior maybe. Isaiah didn't know his name. The voice moved on. Laughter followed. Isaiah kept reading. The second comment came 2 days later. This time in the hallway between classes. Isaiah was at his locker. The same voice, louder now. "Still nothing? What, your mom too broke to help out?" Isaiah closed his locker. Kept his head down. Walked to his next class. A teacher passed in the hallway. She didn't stop. Didn't ask. The noise of students moving between rooms swallowed the comment whole. By the end of the first week of December, the comments were no longer isolated. They came in the morning. During passing periods. After school, near the bus stop. Always from the same group. Always loud enough for others to hear. And always framed as jokes. Isaiah told his mother once. Briefly. After dinner, when she asked how school was going. "Some kids are just messing around," he said. "About what?" she asked. He shrugged. "The charity thing. I didn't bring anything." She frowned. Set down the dish she was drying. "You want me to talk to someone?" "No," he said quickly. "It's fine. It's almost break anyway." She studied him for a moment. Then nodded. "You let me know if it's not fine." He said he would. But he didn't plan to. Because he knew what happened when parents got involved. It made things worse. It always made things worse. The charity drive was scheduled to end on Friday, December 16th. The items would be sorted over the weekend and delivered the following week, just before Christmas. On that Friday, the school held an assembly. All students were required to attend. The gymnasium was packed. Bleachers filled with restless teenagers counting down the hours until break. The principal stood at a podium near center court. Microphone feedback echoed through the space. She thanked the students for their participation. Announced the total number of items collected. Applauded the homerooms that had contributed the most. Isaiah sat near the top of the bleachers. Far from the front. Far from attention. The assembly was winding down when the student council president took the microphone. She was a senior. Popular. The kind of student who appeared in every yearbook photo. She thanked the volunteers who had helped organize the drive. Mentioned a few students by name. Then she paused. "Before we go," she said, "I want to remind everyone that this drive isn't just about giving things. It's about community. It's about showing that we care about each other, no matter our differences." Applause. Light scattered. She smiled. "And I think we can all agree that everyone here has something to give. Even if it's just kindness." More applause. The principal stepped forward. The assembly was dismissed. Students began filing out. Isaiah stood. Started moving toward the exit with the crowd. That's when he heard it. Louder than before. Clear enough that the students around him turned to look. "Hey, Isaiah." He froze. The voice came from below. Near the gymnasium floor. He didn't want to look. But the crowd had slowed. People were watching. "Isaiah Brooks." He turned. The 18-year-old stood near the base of the bleachers. Tall. Confident. Smiling in a way that wasn't friendly. He held something in his hand. A small box. Wrapped in red paper. "Almost forgot," the 18-year-old called out. "Got you a Christmas present." Laughter rippled through the students nearby. Isaiah didn't move. The 18-year-old walked forward. Climbed a few rows of bleachers. Stopped directly in front of Isaiah. Held out the box. "Go on," he said. "Open it." Isaiah looked at the box. Then at the faces around him. Everyone was watching. Teachers were still near the gymnasium floor talking among themselves. They hadn't noticed. Or if they had, they weren't intervening. Isaiah reached out. Took the box. It was light. Too light to be anything real. "Open it," the 18-year-old said again. Isaiah pulled at the wrapping. The paper tore easily. Inside was another box. Smaller. White cardboard. He lifted the lid. Inside was a $1 bill, folded, and beneath it a note, written in marker, block letters. For the charity case. The 18-year-old laughed. Figured you needed it more than most. The students around them weren't laughing anymore. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked away. But no one said anything. Isaiah closed the box. He didn't say a word. He turned, walked down the bleachers, pushed through the crowd, and left the gymnasium. Behind him, the laughter started again. Quieter now, but still there. Isaiah walked straight past the buses, past the parking lot. He walked the 2 miles home. When his mother came home that night, he was already in his room. She knocked, asked if he wanted dinner. He said he wasn't hungry. She didn't push. But the next morning when she went to take out the trash, she found the box, crumpled in the bin outside. She pulled it out, smoothed the wrapping paper, read the note. And for the first time in a long time, Angela Brooks felt something she had learned to suppress. Rage. Cases like this often go unnoticed until someone documents what others dismiss. If stories like this matter to you, and you believe accountability should apply at every level, consider subscribing for more courtroom narratives that examine how justice unfolds when overlooked details finally come to light. Angela Brooks did not call the school that morning. She drove there. It was Saturday. The building was mostly empty. A janitor's car in the parking lot. Lights on in the administrative wing. She tried the main entrance. Locked. She walked around to the side door near the office. Knocked. Waited. A custodian opened the door. Older man. He looked at her, then at the crumpled box in her hand. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak to someone," she said. "About my son." "School's closed, ma'am. You'll have to call Monday." She didn't move. "My son was humiliated in front of the entire school yesterday. I need to speak to someone now." The custodian hesitated, then stepped aside. "I'll see if anyone's here." She waited in the hallway. The building smelled like floor cleaner and old paper. Bulletin boards lined the walls, covered in flyers for winter concerts and basketball games. A few minutes later, a woman appeared. Assistant principal. Angela didn't recognize her. "Mrs. Brooks?" "Yes." The woman gestured toward the office. "Come in." "What's this about?" Angela followed her into a small room. A desk covered in paperwork. A bulletin board pinned with schedules and memos. The assistant principal sat down. Angela remained standing. She placed the box on the desk. "This," Angela said, "is what someone gave my son yesterday. In front of everyone. At your assembly." The assistant principal looked at the box. Pulled it closer. Opened it. Read the note. Her expression didn't change. "I see," she said quietly. "You see. Mrs. Brooks, I understand you're upset. My son was targeted. Publicly. Because we don't have money to donate to your charity drive." The assistant principal set the box down. "I wasn't aware this happened. If you can give me details?" "Details?" Angela's voice rose. "It happened in the gymnasium. In front of teachers. In front of hundreds of students. And no one stopped it. Mrs. Brooks, I'll need to investigate." "There's nothing to investigate. It happened. My son came home and he didn't say a word. Do you understand what that means?" The assistant principal folded her hands. "I will speak to the students involved. I will speak to the staff who were present. And I will address this appropriately." "Appropriately?" "Yes." Angela stared at her. "What's his name?" "I'm sorry?" "The student who did this. What's his name?" The assistant principal paused. "Mrs. Brooks, I can't disclose that information until I've conducted an investigation. You know who it is. I need to follow protocol." Angela picked up the box. "Then follow it," she said. "But if this gets swept under the rug because it's Christmas, or because you don't want bad press before break, I will make sure everyone knows." She turned toward the door. "Mrs. Brooks," the assistant principal called after her. Angela stopped. "We take bullying very seriously here." Angela looked back. "Then prove it." She left. The investigation, such as it was, began the following Monday. The assistant principal interviewed 3 students who had been seated near Isaiah during the assembly. All 3 confirmed the incident had occurred. None of them knew the 18-year-old's name, or claimed not to. The assistant principal reviewed the sign-in sheets for student council volunteers. She cross-referenced the list with students who had been on the gymnasium floor during the assembly. It didn't take long to identify him. Matthew Ryan Holloway, senior, 18 years old, football team, honor roll, no prior disciplinary record. The assistant principal called him into her office Tuesday morning. Matthew arrived with a calm expression. Sat down without being asked. You wanted to see me? I'm following up on an incident that occurred Friday. During the assembly. Okay. A student reported that you gave him a box, wrapped like a gift, with $1 and a note inside. Matthew nodded. Yeah, I did. Can you explain why? It was a joke. A joke? Yeah. We were all talking about the charity drive, and someone said Isaiah hadn't brought anything. I thought it'd be funny to, give him something. Like a gag gift. The note inside said, for the charity case. Matthew shrugged. I didn't mean it in a bad way. It was just a joke. Everyone laughed. Did Isaiah laugh? Matthew paused. I don't know. I didn't really pay attention. His mother filed a complaint. She says her son was humiliated. Matthew shifted in his seat. Look, if he took it the wrong way, I'm sorry. But it wasn't meant to be serious. Why did you choose Isaiah? I don't know. He was just there. You called him by name. Twice. In front of everyone. Matthew didn't answer immediately. I guess I'd heard people talking about him. What kind of talking? Just that he never participated in stuff. I don't know. The assistant principal wrote something down. Matthew, this school has a zero-tolerance policy for bullying and harassment. I wasn't bullying anyone. You publicly singled out a younger student, gave him a box meant to mock him, and did so in front of the entire school. It was a joke, Matthew said again, his voice firmer now. I didn't touch him. I didn't threaten him. I gave him $1. And a note. Yeah, and a note. If that's against the rules, fine. But I'm not a bully. The assistant principal leaned back in her chair. I'm going to recommend a suspension. 3 days. After winter break. Matthew's expression changed. A suspension? For this? Yes. That's going to go on my record. Yes. I'm applying to colleges. I have scholarships. You should have considered that before you chose to humiliate another student. Matthew stood. This is ridiculous. I'll talk to my parents. You're welcome to do that. He left the office. By lunchtime, his parents had called. By the end of the day, they had scheduled a meeting. The meeting took place Wednesday afternoon. Matthew's parents arrived together. His father was a local attorney. His mother worked in real estate. Both were well-dressed, composed, and clearly used to being taken seriously. The assistant principal greeted them in the conference room. The principal joined them. Matthew sat between his parents. We appreciate you meeting with us, Matthew's father began. But we have serious concerns about the way this situation has been handled. I understand, the principal said. But I want to be clear that we take any form of harassment seriously. Harassment? His father's tone sharpened. My son gave another student $1 as a joke. That's not harassment. The context matters, the assistant principal said. The note. The public nature of it. The fact that it targeted a younger student who had been the subject of ongoing comments. Ongoing comments? Matthew's mother interjected. Who made those comments? We're still investigating. So you're punishing my son for something other students may have done? We're addressing what Matthew did, which was deliberate and public. Matthew's father leaned forward. Let me be frank. My son has no history of disciplinary issues. He's a model student. And you're proposing a suspension that could affect his college applications over what amounts to a misunderstanding between teenagers. It's not a misunderstanding, the principal said. It's documented. Multiple witnesses confirmed what happened. And has anyone asked those witnesses if they felt threatened? Or if they interpreted this as a joke? That's not the standard we use. Then what standard are you using? The assistant principal spoke carefully. The impact on the victim. Matthew's father sat back. The victim. A term that seems rather extreme for a situation that involved no physical contact, no threats, and no actual harm. Emotional harm is subjective, he interrupted. And if you're going to suspend students based on subjective claims, you're setting a dangerous precedent. The principal's voice remained steady. Mr. Holloway, I understand your concern for your son's future. But our concern is for the safety and well-being of all students. What Matthew did was not harmless. Then let's talk about context, Matthew's mother said. It's the week before Christmas. Everyone is stressed. The school is hosting a charity drive that highlights economic disparities among students. My son made a poor choice in how he tried to lighten the mood. But you're treating this like a hate crime. No one used that term, the assistant principal said. But you're implying it. We're stating facts. Matthew's father stood. Here are the facts. My son is 18 years old. He has no record of violence, bullying, or misconduct. He made a joke in poor taste. He's willing to apologize. And you're proposing a punishment that is disproportionate and damaging. We've made our recommendation, the principal said. Then we'll appeal it. That's your right. The meeting ended. Matthew's parents filed an appeal the next day. The suspension was delayed pending review. Winter break began. And the file was marked under review. Angela Brooks received a call from the school on Thursday, the day before break. The assistant principal informed her that the matter was being addressed, that the student involved had been identified, that disciplinary action was being considered. Angela asked what that meant. The assistant principal said she couldn't provide details due to privacy laws. Angela asked if her son was safe. The assistant principal assured her that all students were safe. Angela hung up. She didn't feel reassured. That night, she asked Isaiah if anyone had spoken to him at school. He said no. She asked if the 18-year-old had approached him again. He said no. She asked if he felt safe going back after break. He shrugged. It's fine, Mom. But it wasn't fine. She could see it in the way he moved through the house. Quiet. Withdrawn. He didn't talk about school. Didn't mention friends. Spent most of his time in his room. On Christmas morning, she gave him the one gift she'd been able to afford. A jacket. Warm. Practical. He thanked her. Put it on. Smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. Later that day, she called the school district office. Left a message with the superintendent's secretary. Explained briefly what had happened. Asked for someone to call her back. No one did. Winter break ended. Students returned to school on January 3rd. Matthew Holloway returned with them. No suspension had been issued. The appeal had been upheld. The school's decision was that the incident did not meet the threshold for suspension under the district's policy. Matthew was required to attend a 1-hour session on respectful communication. He was asked to write a letter of apology. He did. The letter was never delivered to Isaiah. It was filed in the assistant principal's office. Angela Brooks found out about the decision on January 5th. Not from the school. From Isaiah, who came home and told her, in a voice so flat it frightened her, that nothing had happened. What do you mean, nothing? He's still there. No one said anything. It's like it didn't happen. Angela called the school. Was transferred to the assistant principal. Mrs. Brooks, I understand you're frustrated. Frustrated? My son was humiliated. You told me it was being handled. It was. We conducted a thorough investigation. And we determined that the appropriate response was educational rather than punitive. Educational. Yes. The student attended a session on respectful behavior. He wrote an apology. Did my son receive that apology? Pause. It was deemed more appropriate to keep it on file. Why? To avoid further conflict. Angela's hands tightened around the phone. So the boy who humiliated my son in front of the entire school gets to write a letter no one sees, attend a 1-hour class, and go back to his life. And my son has to see him every day. Mrs. Brooks, we followed district policy. Then your policy is broken. She hung up. That night, she contacted a lawyer. Not someone expensive. Not someone who handled high-profile cases. Just someone who listened. His name was David Ortiz, a solo practitioner who specialized in civil rights and education law. His office was a single room above a diner on the east side of town. Angela met with him the following Saturday. She brought the box, the note, a timeline she had written out herself, documenting every incident Isaiah had mentioned. David listened, took notes, asked questions. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. You want to file a complaint? I want my son to be safe, and I want that boy held accountable. The school says they handled it. They didn't. David tapped his pen against the desk. Okay, here's what we can do. We can file a formal complaint with the district under Title VI. Argue that the school failed to address racially motivated harassment. Racially motivated? Your son is black. The boy who targeted him is white. The harassment centered on economic status, yes, but the public nature of it, the language used, there's an argument to be made that race was a factor. Angela hesitated. You think that'll work? I think it'll force them to take it seriously. Schools are required to investigate Title VI complaints. And if they don't, we can escalate. Escalate how? To the state. Or to court if necessary. Angela looked down at the box on the desk. How much will this cost? For the initial complaint? Nothing. I'll do it pro bono. If it goes further, we'll talk. She looked up. Why? Because I have a daughter, he said quietly. And if someone did this to her, I'd want someone to help. Angela nodded. Okay, let's do it. The formal complaint was filed on January 12th. It cited failure to address harassment, failure to provide a safe educational environment, and failure to adequately investigate a racially motivated incident. It requested a full investigation. It requested that the school's initial determination be overturned. And it requested that appropriate disciplinary action be taken. The district acknowledged receipt of the complaint. An investigator was assigned. The school was notified. And for the first time since the assembly, Angela felt like someone was listening. But listening is not the same as acting. And what came next would test just how far the system was willing to go to avoid confronting the truth. The investigator assigned to the case was a woman named Patricia Henning. She worked for the district's Office of Equity and Compliance, a department created years earlier in response to federal mandates. Her office was located in the district's central administrative building, a converted elementary school on the outskirts of town. Patricia had been with the district for 11 years. She had investigated dozens of complaints. Most were resolved quietly. Mediation, training sessions, policy reminders. Very few resulted in formal findings. Even fewer led to discipline. On January 18th, Patricia contacted Angela Brooks to schedule an interview. They met at David Ortiz's office. Patricia arrived with a laptop and a folder. She introduced herself, explained the process. I'll be interviewing all parties involved, she said. Students, staff, anyone with relevant information. My job is to determine whether the school's response was adequate under Title VI. And if it wasn't? Angela asked. Then I'll make recommendations to the district. What kind of recommendations? That depends on what I find. David spoke up. Will Matthew Holloway be interviewed? Yes. And will his prior statements be considered? Everything will be considered. David slid a folder across the desk. We've compiled a timeline. Witness statements from students who observed the harassment leading up to the assembly. Text messages. Social media posts. Patricia opened the folder. Scan the contents. Where did you get these? Isaiah's classmates. Some came forward after the complaint was filed. Patricia made a note. I'll review them. Will you interview the students who provided them? If necessary. Angela leaned forward. My son has been going to school every day with that boy still there. No consequences. Nothing. How is that protecting him? Patricia's expression remained neutral. The school followed its disciplinary policy. Their policy failed him. That's what I'm here to determine. The interview with Isaiah took place the following week. Patricia met with him at the school, in a small conference room near the guidance office. Angela was present. David was not. District policy prohibited attorneys from attending student interviews. Patricia started with basic questions. How long had Isaiah been at the school? What grade he was in? Whether he had friends? Isaiah answered quietly. Yes, a few. Then Patricia asked about the charity drive. Did you participate? No. Why not? Isaiah glanced at his mother. We didn't have anything to give. Did that bother you? He shrugged. No. Did anyone at school mention it? Some kids. What did they say? Isaiah looked down. Just stuff. That I didn't bring anything. Can you tell me who said that? I don't know all their names. Do you know any of them? He hesitated. Matthew. I know him. Matthew Holloway? Yeah. What did Matthew say to you? Isaiah's voice dropped. He said my mom was too broke to help out. When did he say that? A few times. In the hallway. At lunch. Did you tell anyone? No. Why not? Because it doesn't help. It just makes it worse. Patricia wrote that down. Tell me about the assembly. Isaiah's jaw tightened. He called my name. In front of everyone. Gave me a box. What was in the box? $1. And a note. What did the note say? For the charity case. How did you feel when you opened it? Isaiah didn't answer right away. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Embarrassed. Did anyone try to stop it? No. Were there teachers nearby? Yeah. Did they say anything? No. Patricia looked at Angela. Then back at Isaiah. Has Matthew approached you since then? No. Do you see him at school? Yeah. How does that make you feel? Isaiah's hands clenched in his lap. I don't know. Uncomfortable? Scared. I just don't want to deal with it. Patricia closed her notebook. Thank you, Isaiah. I know this wasn't easy. He nodded. Left the room with his mother. Patricia sat alone for a moment, reviewed her notes. Then she began scheduling the next round of interviews. The first was with the assistant principal. Patricia met with her 2 days later. Same conference room. Walk me through what happened after Mrs. Brooks came to the school, Patricia said. The assistant principal recounted the investigation, the interviews with students, the meeting with Matthew, the meeting with his parents. And you recommended a suspension? Yes. 3 days. But it was overturned. The appeal board felt the punishment was disproportionate. On what grounds? Matthew had no prior record. The incident involved no physical contact. And the intent, according to Matthew, was not to harm. Did you believe that? The assistant principal paused. I believe the impact on Isaiah was real, regardless of intent. But the board disagreed. Yes. Did you advocate for your recommendation during the appeal? I presented the facts. That's not what I asked. The assistant principal shifted in her seat. I supported the recommendation. But the final decision wasn't mine. Patricia made a note. Were you aware of prior incidents involving Matthew and Isaiah? Not specifically. The complaint includes statements from students who witnessed verbal harassment in the weeks leading up to the assembly. Were those investigated? No. Why not? They weren't reported at the time. But they were reported now. After the formal complaint was filed, yes. And have you followed up? That's part of your investigation, not mine. Patricia looked up. Understood. But let me ask you this. If those incidents had been reported at the time, would you have investigated? Yes. And if they had been substantiated, would that have changed your recommendation? The assistant principal didn't answer immediately. Possibly. Meaning it would have supported a pattern of behavior. Yes. Patricia closed her notebook. Thank you. The next interview was with the principal. It took place the following afternoon. Same questions. Different answers. The appeal process exists for a reason, the principal said. To ensure that disciplinary decisions are fair and consistent. Was the decision fair? Patricia asked. The board believed it was. Do you? The principal hesitated. I think it was complicated. How so? Matthew is a good student. No history of problems. His parents are involved. They made a compelling case that the punishment would have lasting consequences. And Isaiah? Isaiah is also a good student. That's not what I meant. The principal sighed. I understand the impact this had on Isaiah. I do. But we have to balance the rights of both students. Even when one of them was the victim? Even then. Patricia leaned back. Did you review the note that was in the box? Yes. Did you consider the language used? I did. And? It was offensive. But it wasn't a threat. It was targeted. It was public. And it singled out a student based on economic status. I agree. Then why wasn't it treated as harassment? It was. That's why Matthew was required to attend the session and write an apology. An apology Isaiah never received. The principal's expression tightened. We made the decision that delivering the apology could escalate the situation. Or it could have provided accountability. We did what we thought was best. Patricia stood. Thank you for your time. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia interviewed 6 more people. 3 students who had witnessed the assembly incident. 2 teachers who had been present in the gymnasium. And Matthew Holloway. The students confirmed what Isaiah had said. Matthew had called Isaiah's name. Multiple times. Loud enough that people turned to look. He had walked up the bleachers. Given Isaiah the box. Waited while Isaiah opened it. The laughter had been widespread. And the teachers nearby hadn't intervened. One of the students, a girl named Kayla, mentioned something else. It wasn't just that day, she said. People had been talking about Isaiah for weeks. What kind of talking? Saying he was poor. That his mom couldn't afford stuff. That he didn't belong here. Did you hear Matthew say those things? Yeah. A few times. Did you report it? No. Why not? Kayla looked uncomfortable. I don't know. It just seemed like normal stuff. People say things. Patricia made a note. Did you ever see anyone stand up for Isaiah? No. The 2 teachers were less helpful. Both admitted they had been in the gymnasium. Both said they didn't see the incident clearly. Too many students. Too much movement. One of them, a history teacher named Mr. Phelps, was more candid. "I saw Matthew go up into the bleachers," he said, "but I didn't know what he was doing. By the time I realized something was happening, it was over." "Did you follow up?" "No." "Why not?" "I assumed someone else would handle it." "Did you report it to administration?" "No." "Why not?" Mr. Phelps looked down. "Because I didn't think it was serious." Patricia's interview with Matthew took place on February 7th. He arrived with his father. David Ortiz had requested to be present, but was denied. Only the student and a parent or guardian were allowed. Patricia explained the purpose of the interview. Matthew nodded, looked calm. "I've already talked about this," he said. "Multiple times." "I know, but I need to hear it myself." She started with the same questions she'd asked Isaiah. How long had Matthew been at the school? What activities he was involved in? Whether he knew Isaiah? Matthew answered easily. 4 years. Football. Student council. I knew who he was. But you weren't friends? No. Had you spoken to him before the assembly? A few times. About what? Just random stuff. I don't remember. Patricia opened her folder. Pulled out a printed screenshot. A text message. Sent from Matthew's number to another student. Dated December 10th. It read, "Brooks still hasn't brought anything else. Kid's probably on the donation list himself." Patricia slid it across the table. "Do you remember sending this?" Matthew looked at it, then at his father. His father's expression didn't change. "I don't know," Matthew said. "Maybe. It's your number." "Okay. Then yeah. I sent it." "What did you mean by it?" "It was a joke." "A joke about Isaiah being poor?" "No. A joke about the charity drive. Everyone was talking about who brought what. But you specifically mentioned Isaiah. Because he was the only one who didn't bring anything." "How did you know that?" Matthew shrugged. "I don't know. People talked." Patricia pulled out another screenshot. A social media post. From Matthew's account. Dated December 14th. It showed a photo of donation boxes in the school hallway. The caption read, "Guess some people just take, they don't give." Patricia pointed to it. "What were you referring to here?" "Nothing specific. It was posted 2 days before the assembly. After you'd already been making comments about Isaiah." "That's not what it was about." "Then what was it about?" Matthew's father spoke up. "Ms. Henning, my son has already explained that the assembly incident was a lapse in judgment. He's apologized. He's completed the required session. This feels like harassment." Patricia didn't look away from Matthew. "I'm trying to determine whether there was a pattern of behavior. These posts and messages suggest there was. They suggest my son made some offhand comments. That's not a pattern. That's not for you to decide." Matthew's father stood. "If you're going to continue questioning my son's character based on out-of-context screenshots, I'm ending this interview." Patricia closed her folder. "That's your right. But understand that refusing to cooperate will be noted in my report." "Noted then." They left. Patricia sat alone in the conference room. She had what she needed. Not everything, but enough. On February 15th, Patricia submitted her report to the district. It was 43 pages long. It included interview summaries, documentary evidence, a timeline of events, and a conclusion. The conclusion stated that the school had failed to adequately investigate the harassment Isaiah had experienced, that the decision to overturn the suspension was not supported by the evidence, and that the school's response had created a hostile environment for Isaiah Brooks. Patricia recommended the following: that Matthew Holloway be suspended for 10 days, that he be required to complete a more comprehensive program on bullying and harassment, that the school conduct mandatory training for all staff on recognizing and addressing racially motivated harassment, and that Isaiah Brooks be offered support services, including counseling. The report was sent to the superintendent. The superintendent forwarded it to the school board. The school board scheduled a meeting to discuss it. That meeting took place on March 2nd. It was closed to the public. Angela Brooks was not invited. David Ortiz was not invited. Only board members, the superintendent, and the school's attorney were present. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When it ended, the board issued a statement. It acknowledged that the school's initial response had been inadequate. It accepted Patricia Henning's recommendations in part. Matthew would be suspended, but not for 10 days. For 5. He would complete the program. The staff training would be conducted, and Isaiah would be offered counseling. The statement also noted that the district was committed to ensuring a safe environment for all students. Angela Brooks received a copy of the statement on March 4th. She read it twice, then called David. 5 days, she said. I know. That's it. It's better than nothing. It's not enough. David was quiet for a moment. No, he said finally. It's not. So what do we do? We can appeal to the state. Or we can file a civil suit. Which one gets results? A suit gets attention. But it takes time. Angela looked at the statement again. How much time? Months. Maybe longer. She closed her eyes. And in the meantime? In the meantime, the district implements the recommendations. And we see if they're serious about change. Angela didn't believe they were. But she said she'd think about it. The 5-day suspension was issued on March 7th. Matthew served it the following week. When he returned to school, nothing had changed. No announcement was made. No acknowledgement that anything had happened. Isaiah saw him in the hallway on the first day back. Matthew walked past without looking at him. Isaiah kept his head down. The staff training was scheduled for April. A single afternoon session. Attendance was mandatory. The trainer was brought in from outside the district. She showed slides. Talked about implicit bias. Reviewed the legal requirements under Title VI. Most of the teachers sat quietly. A few took notes. One, the history teacher who had been in the gymnasium, asked a question. What are we supposed to do if we're not sure whether something is harassment or just kids being kids? The trainer paused. If a student feels targeted, it's worth taking seriously. But kids exaggerate. They take things personally. Which is why you investigate. You don't dismiss. The teacher leaned back. Said nothing else. The session ended. Everyone signed the attendance sheet. And went back to their classrooms. Isaiah's counseling began in mid-March. Once a week. 30 minutes. In the guidance office. The counselor's name was Ms. Brennan. She was kind. Asked Isaiah how he was feeling. Whether he felt safe. Whether he wanted to talk about what happened. Isaiah answered her questions. But he didn't say much. I'm fine, he told her. It's okay not to be fine, she said. I know. But he didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to relive it. Didn't want to be the kid who needed help. After the 4th session, Ms. Brennan called Angela. Isaiah's doing okay, she said. But he's not opening up. What does that mean? It means he's coping. But I'm not sure he's healing. Angela didn't know what to say to that. Can you make him talk? No. He has to want to. So what do I do? Be patient. And let him know it's okay to be angry. Angela thanked her. Hung up. That night, she asked Isaiah if the counseling was helping. He shrugged. It's fine. Do you want to keep going? Do I have to? No. He didn't go back. By April, the case seemed to be over. The district had issued its recommendations. The suspension had been served. The training had been completed. Matthew Holloway was back in school. Isaiah was still attending counseling. And Angela Brooks was left with the feeling that nothing had really changed. David called her on April 20th. I got a call from the State Department of Education, he said. About what? They're opening their own investigation. Angela sat up. Why? Because someone filed a separate complaint. Not just about Isaiah. About the school's overall handling of harassment complaints. Who filed it? I don't know. It's anonymous. What does that mean for us? It means they'll review everything. The district's investigation. The recommendations. The implementation. And if they find the district didn't comply with Title VI, they can withhold federal funding. Angela felt something she hadn't felt in months. Oh, so this isn't over. No, David said. It's not. The state investigation began in May. An investigator was assigned. His name was Leonard Watts. He had been with the state Civil Rights Division for 18 years. He had investigated dozens of districts. And he had a reputation for being thorough. Leonard requested copies of all documents related to Isaiah's case. The district complied. He reviewed Patricia Henning's report, the school board's decision, the text messages and social media posts, the interview transcripts, and then he requested additional documents, discipline records for the past 5 years, complaints filed under Title VI during the same period, staff training logs. The district's attorney objected, argued that the request was overly broad. Leonard declined to narrow it. If you want to demonstrate compliance, he wrote in response, you'll provide the documents. The district provided them. It took 3 weeks to compile everything. When Leonard reviewed the files, he found patterns. Complaints that had been dismissed without investigation. Incidents that had been classified as mutual conflict despite clear evidence of harassment. Training sessions that existed only on paper. And a discipline system that disproportionately penalized Black and Latino students for minor infractions while white students received warnings for more serious behavior. Isaiah's case was not an outlier. It was representative. Leonard drafted his preliminary findings in June. They were damning. The district had failed to adequately respond to harassment complaints. It had failed to train staff on recognizing racially motivated harassment. And it had failed to ensure equitable discipline. The report was sent to the district in early July. The district was given 30 days to respond. Angela Brooks didn't know any of this was happening. Not yet. She was working. Trying to get through the spring. Trying to keep Isaiah focused on finishing the school year. He had barely passed 2 of his classes. His grades had dropped. He had stopped participating. Angela had met with his teachers. They were sympathetic. But they didn't know what to do. "He's just not engaged," one of them said. "Can you blame him?" Angela replied. The teacher didn't answer. Isaiah finished 8th grade on June 8th. His mother took the day off work to attend the promotion ceremony. Isaiah walked across the stage. Received his certificate. Didn't smile. When they got home, Angela asked if he wanted to do anything to celebrate. "Not really," he said. She let it go. That night David called. "The state finished its investigation," he said. "And?" "They found the district violated Title VI. Multiple times." Angela sat down. "What happens now?" "They negotiate. The district can either agree to a corrective action plan, or the state can withhold funding." "Will they agree?" "They don't have much choice." "What's in the plan?" "I don't know yet. But I'll keep you updated." Angela hung up. Sat in the quiet. For the first time since December, she felt like maybe, just maybe, the system had listened. But listening is only the first step. The real question was whether anyone would act. The corrective action plan was finalized on August 12th. It required the district to revise its harassment and bullying policies to explicitly address racially motivated behavior, implement a new reporting system that allowed for anonymous complaints, conduct quarterly training for all staff on implicit bias and harassment recognition, establish an independent review board to assess discipline decisions, and issue a public statement acknowledging the findings and committing to change. The district agreed. The statement was released on August 20th. It was brief, professional. It acknowledged that the district had not fully met its obligations under Title VI. It outlined the corrective actions. And it expressed a commitment to creating a safe and equitable environment for all students. Angela read the statement online. It didn't mention Isaiah by name. It didn't mention Matthew. It was sanitized. Bureaucratic. But it was something. That evening she showed it to Isaiah. "Does this change anything?" he asked. "I don't know," she said honestly. Then what was the point? She didn't have a good answer. Isaiah started high school in September. A different building. A different group of students. Matthew Holloway was still at the high school. A senior now. But their paths didn't cross often. Different schedules. Different social circles. Isaiah kept to himself. Made a few friends. Joined the robotics club. His grades improved. Slowly. Angela worked the same 2 jobs. But she checked in more often. Asked how his day was. Listened when he wanted to talk. And gave him space when he didn't. For a while it seemed like maybe they could move forward. But some wounds don't close. They scar. And scars can be reopened. In late October, Angela received a call from David. "I need to tell you something," he said. "What?" "The state's investigation led to a broader review. And during that review they found something." "Found what?" "Matthew Holloway's disciplinary record. The one from your case." "Okay." "It was altered." Angela's breath caught. "What do you mean altered?" "Someone removed entries. Before it was submitted to the appeal board." "What entries?" "Prior complaints. From other students. Going back 2 years." Angela felt cold. What kind of complaints? Harassment. Verbal intimidation. One was racial. Against a Latino student. And they were removed? Yes. By who? That's what the state is trying to determine. Angela's voice shook. So the board made their decision based on false information? Yes. And if they'd known, the suspension might have been upheld. Or extended. Angela was silent. There's more, David said quietly. What? The state's recommending criminal charges. Against who? Whoever altered the records. And possibly against Matthew. For what? Civil rights violations. Under state and federal law. Angela sat down. She had thought it was over. She had thought they were moving on. But it wasn't over. It was just beginning. The criminal investigation was opened in early November. A special prosecutor was assigned. Her name was Monica Reyes. She had spent 15 years in the state attorney general's office. She specialized in civil rights cases. And she didn't take shortcuts. Monica reviewed everything the state investigation had uncovered. She interviewed witnesses. She subpoenaed records. And she built a case, not just against Matthew, but against the assistant principal who had overseen the discipline process. Her name was Catherine Wells. The same person who had met with Angela that Saturday morning in December. The same person who had recommended a suspension. And the same person who had access to Matthew's disciplinary file before it was submitted to the appeal board. On December 5th, Catherine Wells was placed on administrative leave. The district issued a statement saying the matter was under investigation. It did not provide details. But the news spread quickly. Teachers talked. Parents asked questions. And students, of course, speculated. Isaiah heard about it from a classmate. He didn't know how to feel. Part of him felt vindicated. Part of him just felt tired. That evening he asked his mother if it was true. Is what true? That someone at the school is in trouble. Angela hesitated. Then nodded. Yes. Because of me? Because of what they did. Isaiah looked away. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Okay. But he couldn't escape it. On December 15th, the prosecutor's office announced formal charges. Catherine Wells was charged with tampering with public records. A felony. Matthew Holloway was charged with criminal harassment and violating Indiana's hate crime statute. The news made the local paper. Then the regional outlets. And by the next morning it was everywhere. The story people had tried to bury was now front-page news. And for the first time, Angela Brooks wasn't alone in demanding accountability. The community was watching. And the courtroom was waiting. The arraignment for Catherine Wells took place on January 9, 2017. The courtroom was small. Located in the County Administrative Building. 3rd floor. Room 304. Catherine arrived in a dark suit. Her attorney beside her. She looked composed. Professional. The way someone looks when they believe this is all a misunderstanding that will be cleared up soon. The judge presiding was the Honorable Diane Mercer. She had been on the bench for 14 years. Civil and criminal cases. A reputation for fairness. And very little patience for procedural games. Judge Mercer reviewed the charging documents. Looked up. Ms. Wells, you are charged with 1 count of tampering with public records, a Class D felony. Do you understand the charge? Yes, Your Honor. How do you plead? Catherine's attorney stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. Judge Mercer nodded. Set a preliminary hearing date. Reviewed bail conditions. Catherine was released on her own recognizance. The hearing took less than 10 minutes. But as Catherine left the courtroom, reporters were waiting in the hallway. She said nothing. Her attorney issued a brief statement. Ms. Wells denies any wrongdoing and looks forward to clearing her name. The cameras followed them to the elevator. Matthew Holloway's arraignment was scheduled for the following week. January 16th. Same courtroom. Different atmosphere. Matthew arrived with both parents. His father, the attorney, looked grim. His mother's face was tight. Matthew wore a button-down shirt and slacks. His expression was harder to read. Not quite confident anymore. But not quite afraid either. Judge Mercer reviewed the charges. Criminal harassment. Violation of Indiana Code 35-46-1-7.1. And hate crime enhancement under Indiana Code 35-38-1-7.1. Matthew's father stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. Understood. Bail? The prosecutor, Monica Reyes, spoke for the first time. The state requests bail be set at $25,000. The defendant has demonstrated a pattern of behavior targeting vulnerable individuals. There is concern he may attempt to contact the victim or other witnesses. Matthew's father responded immediately. Your Honor, my client is an 18-year-old college student with no prior criminal record. He has strong ties to the community. He poses no flight risk and no danger. We request release on recognizance. Judge Mercer looked at Matthew. Mr. Holloway, are you currently enrolled in college? Yes, Your Honor. Where? Indiana State. I started last fall. Are you living at home? Yes. Judge Mercer tapped her pen on the bench. Bail is set at $10,000. Cash or bond. The defendant is ordered to have no contact with Isaiah Brooks or any witnesses related to this case. Violation will result in immediate revocation of bail. Preliminary hearing is set for February 6th. Matthew's father posted bail that afternoon. Matthew was released by evening. Angela Brooks heard about it from David. He's out, David said over the phone. I know. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Isaiah's at a different school. They won't run into each other. Still, Angela agreed. There was a pause. The prosecutor wants to meet with you, David said. Why? To prepare. If this goes to trial, Isaiah will have to testify. Angela's stomach turned. I was afraid of that. He doesn't have to. But without his testimony, the case is weaker. How much weaker? Significantly. Angela closed her eyes. Can I think about it? Of course. That night, Angela sat with Isaiah in the living room. The television was on, but neither of them was watching. There's something we need to talk about, she said. Isaiah looked over. Okay. The prosecutor handling Matthew's case wants to meet with us. She wants to talk to you about what happened. Isaiah's expression didn't change. Why? Because if the case goes to trial, they might need you to testify. In court? Yes. Isaiah looked back at the television. Do I have to? No. But it would help. Help who? Help make sure he's held accountable. Isaiah was quiet for a long time. I don't want to see him again. I know. And I don't want everyone staring at me. I know. Then why are you asking me to do it? Angela reached over, took his hand. Because I think you're brave enough. And because I think you deserve to be heard. Isaiah pulled his hand away. I don't feel brave. You don't have to feel it to be it. He looked at her. What if I say no? Then we say no. Isaiah turned back to the screen. Can I think about it? Of course. He thought about it for 3 days. On the third day he told his mother he would do it. But only if I don't have to be in the same room as him. Angela called David. David called the prosecutor. Monica Reyes scheduled a meeting for January 28th. Her office was located in the government complex downtown. 4th floor. At the end of a long hallway lined with file boxes and outdated motivational posters. Monica greeted them at the door. She was in her mid-40s. Professional but not cold. She shook Angela's hand. Then knelt slightly to be at Isaiah's eye level. Thank you for coming, Isaiah. I know this isn't easy. Isaiah nodded. Let's sit. They moved into a conference room. Plain table. Metal chairs. A recorder sat on the table. Monica explained what would happen. I'm going to ask you questions about what happened at the school. The assembly. The things Matthew said and did. I need to understand it from your perspective. Okay. And if at any point you need a break, just tell me. Okay. Monica pressed record. Started with background questions. How long Isaiah had been at the school. What grade he was in. What a typical day looked like. Isaiah answered quietly but clearly. Then Monica moved to the harder questions. When did you first notice Matthew Holloway? I don't know. Maybe October. What made you notice him? He said something in the hallway. What did he say? Isaiah hesitated. That I looked lost. Did he say it to you or about you? To his friends. But loud enough for me to hear. Did it bother you? A little. Did it happen again? Yeah. How many times? Isaiah shrugged. I don't know. A lot. Can you give me examples? Isaiah looked down. He called me broke. Said my mom worked 2 jobs because we couldn't afford anything. Said I probably lived in a trailer. Did you respond? No. Why not? Because I didn't want it to get worse. Monica nodded. Did anyone else join in? Sometimes. His friends. Do you know their names? No. I didn't really pay attention. Okay. Let's talk about the charity drive. Isaiah's hands clenched in his lap. Monica saw it but continued gently. Did you participate? No. Did Matthew comment on that? Yeah. He asked if my mom was too poor to donate. Where did this happen? In the cafeteria. At lunch. Was anyone else around? A lot of people. Did anyone say anything? No. Did any teachers hear? I don't know. Maybe. Monica paused. Let's talk about the assembly. Isaiah's breathing changed. Became shallow. Angela leaned forward. Do you need a break, baby? Isaiah shook his head. I'm okay. Monica waited, then continued. What do you remember about the assembly? We were in the gym. The principal was talking about the charity drive. Then it ended and people started leaving. And then? Matthew called my name. How many times? Twice. Maybe 3 times. Was it loud? Yeah. Everyone could hear. What did you do? I stopped. I didn't want to, but everyone was looking. What happened next? He came up the bleachers. He had a box. He said it was for me. Did he say anything else? He said, got you a Christmas present. And told me to open it. Did you want to open it? No. But you did. Yeah. Why? Because everyone was watching. And I didn't know what else to do. What was inside? $1. And a note. What did the note say? Isaiah's voice dropped to almost a whisper. It said, for the charity case. How did that make you feel? Isaiah didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice cracked. Like everyone was laughing at me. Were they? Some of them. What did you do after you read the note? I left. Did anyone try to stop you? No. Did any teachers follow up with you? No. Monica leaned back. Thank you, Isaiah. I know that was hard. Isaiah wiped his eyes quickly. Angela put her arm around him. Monica turned off the recorder. You did really well, she said. Isaiah didn't respond. Angela looked at Monica. What happens now? Now I finish building the case. We have the text messages, the social media posts, witness statements, and now Isaiah's account. Is it enough? For the harassment charge, yes. For the hate crime enhancement, it's more complicated. Why? Because we have to prove Matthew was motivated by racial animus. The language he used suggests it. But his attorney will argue it was about economic status, not race. Isn't that the same thing? Not legally. Economic status isn't a protected class under Indiana's hate crime statute. Race is. Angela frowned. But Isaiah is black. Matthew is white. That has to matter. It does. And we'll argue that the harassment wasn't just about money. It was about who Isaiah is. But we have to prove it. How? By showing a pattern. By connecting the comments to race, not just poverty. Monica paused. There's something else. What? We've been investigating Matthew's online activity. Social media. Private messages. And we found some things. What kind of things? Monica pulled out a folder. Slid it across the table. Angela opened it. Inside were printed screenshots. Posts from Matthew's accounts. Some public. Some private. Angela read the first one. A meme shared on Matthew's page. It showed a caricature of a black child with exaggerated features. The caption read, when you ask for donations but can't even donate respect. The post was dated December 12th. Angela's hands shook. She flipped to the next page. A text conversation between Matthew and another student. Matthew, charity drive's such a joke. Half these kids don't deserve help. Other student, why? Matthew, because they're too lazy to work for it. Just want handouts. Other student, you talking about Brooks? Matthew, among others. Angela closed the folder. Looked at Monica. This is who he is. Yes. And the school knew? Some of it. The social media posts were public. But no one reported them. Angela felt the anger rising again. So what do we do with this? We use it. A trial. To show this wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern of thinking. Angela looked at Isaiah. He was staring at the table. Is this going to come out in court? Angela asked. If we go to trial, yes. And Isaiah will have to hear it? He doesn't have to be in the courtroom for all of it. We can arrange for him to testify and then leave. Angela nodded slowly. Okay. They left the prosecutor's office an hour later. Isaiah didn't say much on the drive home. When they pulled into the driveway, Angela turned off the car but didn't get out. I'm proud of you, she said. Isaiah looked out the window. For what? For being willing to do this. For being strong. I don't feel strong. I know. But you are. He finally looked at her. Do you think it'll matter? What do you mean? All of this. The trial. Do you think it'll actually change anything? Angela wanted to say yes. Wanted to promise him that justice would be done. That people would be held accountable. That things would get better. But she didn't know if any of that was true. So she said the only thing she could. I don't know. But we have to try. Isaiah nodded. They went inside. The preliminary hearing for Catherine Wells took place on February 3rd. The purpose was to determine whether there was enough evidence to proceed to trial. The courtroom was fuller this time. Reporters. A few members of the school board. Parents who had been following the case. Catherine sat at the defense table. Her attorney beside her. She looked thinner than she had at the arraignment. More worn. Monica Reyes presented the state's case. She called 2 witnesses. The first was Patricia Henning, the district investigator. Monica walked her through the investigation she had conducted. During your investigation, did you review Matthew Holloway's disciplinary file? Yes. What did you find? The file showed no prior incidents. No complaints. No warnings. Did that surprise you? Yes. Why? Because students I interviewed mentioned prior incidents involving Matthew. Comments. Behavior patterns. But none of it was in his file. Did you follow up? I requested the full record from the district's database. That's when I discovered discrepancies. What kind of discrepancies? Entries that should have been in Matthew's file weren't there. Can you be more specific? Patricia pulled out a document. In October 2014, a student named Carlos Menendez filed a complaint. He said Matthew had made derogatory comments about his ethnicity. The complaint was documented in the system. But it wasn't included in Matthew's file when it was reviewed by the appeal board. Who had access to that file? The assistant principal, Catherine Wells. And was there any legitimate reason for the entry to be excluded? No. Catherine's attorney objected. Speculation, Your Honor. The witness cannot speak to Ms. Wells's intent. I'll rephrase, Monica said. Was there a policy reason for the entry to be excluded? No. Thank you. The second witness was a digital forensics specialist named Aaron Pruitt. He had been hired by the state to examine the district's database. Mr. Pruitt, what did you discover during your examination? I found evidence that several entries in Matthew Holloway's file had been deleted. How many? 4. Over what time period? 2 years. When were they deleted? December 20th, 2016. What's significant about that date? That's 3 days after the appeal board meeting regarding Matthew Holloway's suspension. And who deleted them? The activity log shows the account that made the deletions belonged to Catherine Wells. Catherine's attorney stood. Your Honor, I object. This is circumstantial. The account may have been accessed by someone else. Do you have evidence of that? Judge Mercer asked. Not at this time. Then the objection is overruled. Continue. Monica turned back to Aaron. Is it possible the deletions were accidental? No. Each entry requires a manual action to delete. And there's a confirmation prompt. It's not something that happens by mistake. Thank you. Catherine's attorney cross-examined both witnesses. Tried to raise doubt. Suggested other people might have had access to the account. Suggested the deletions might have been part of routine database maintenance. But the evidence was clear. And Judge Mercer was not persuaded by speculation. At the end of the hearing, she ruled. The court finds sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. A trial date will be set within 60 days. Catherine's face remained expressionless. But her attorney looked concerned. As they left the courtroom, Catherine finally spoke. To no one in particular. I was trying to help him. Her attorney touched her arm. Said nothing. They walked out. Matthew Holloway's preliminary hearing took place 3 days later. February 6th. The courtroom was even more crowded. Matthew sat at the defense table with his father and a second attorney his father had hired. A criminal defense specialist from Indianapolis. Monica presented the state's case. She called Isaiah. He had been dreading this moment for weeks. His mother walked him to the courtroom. Waited outside. Isaiah entered alone. The room felt enormous. Faces everywhere. He kept his eyes on the floor as he walked to the witness stand. The bailiff swore him in. Monica approached. Isaiah, I know this is difficult. I'm going to ask you some questions. Just answer as honestly as you can. Okay. Okay. How old are you? 14. And you're a student at Jefferson High School? Yes. Do you know Matthew Holloway? Yes. Is he in the courtroom today? Isaiah's eyes flicked toward the defense table. Then away. Yes. Can you point to him? Isaiah hesitated. Then pointed. The one in the blue shirt. Thank you. Isaiah, I want to ask you about December 16th, 2016. Do you remember that day? Yes. What happened? Isaiah's voice was quiet. There was an assembly. And Matthew gave me a box. Why did he give you a box? I don't know. What was in the box? $1. And a note. What did the note say? Isaiah's hands gripped the edge of the witness stand. It said, "For the charity case." How did that make you feel? Embarrassed. Why? Because everyone saw. Did Matthew say anything when he gave you the box? He said it was a Christmas present, and that I needed it. Monica paused. Isaiah, did Matthew ever say anything to you before that day? Yes. What kind of things? That I was poor. That my mom couldn't afford stuff. That I didn't belong. Did he ever mention your race? Isaiah hesitated. Not directly. What do you mean? He didn't say I was black. But he said things like people like me just want handouts. People like you. Yeah. Monica nodded. Thank you, Isaiah. Matthew's attorney stood for cross-examination. His name was Robert Klein. Expensive suit. Calm demeanor. Isaiah, you said Matthew gave you $1. Is that correct? Yes. Did he physically harm you? No. Did he threaten you? No. Did he touch you in any way? No. So he gave you $1 and a note. That's it. Isaiah looked confused. Yes. And you felt embarrassed because other students were watching? Yes. But Matthew didn't force anyone to watch, did he? No. In fact, students watch all kinds of things at school. People trip. People get called on in class. People do embarrassing things all the time. Correct. I guess. So what makes this different? Isaiah looked at Monica. She nodded slightly. Because he did it on purpose. To make me feel bad. You believe that was his intent? Yes. But you don't know for certain what his intent was, do you? No. He could have been trying to be funny. It wasn't funny. To you. But humor is subjective, isn't it? Monica stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Robert continued. Isaiah, you said Matthew made comments to you before the assembly. About being poor. About your mother. But did he ever use a racial slur? No. Did he ever say anything explicitly about your race? Not exactly. Not exactly or not at all? Not exactly. Can you explain? Isaiah struggled to find the words. It was the way he said things. Like he thought less of me because of who I am. But he never said it was because you're black. No. Thank you. No further questions. Isaiah stepped down. His legs felt weak. His mother was waiting in the hallway. She wrapped her arms around him. You did good, she whispered. It didn't feel good. I know. Monica called 2 more witnesses. Kayla, the student who had witnessed the harassment in the hallways, and Mr. Phelps, the history teacher who had been in the gymnasium. Both confirmed parts of Isaiah's account, but neither could definitively say the harassment was racially motivated. Matthew's attorney emphasized that in his closing argument. Your Honor, what we have here is a case of poor judgment. A teenager who made an insensitive joke. But insensitivity is not a crime. The state has not proven that my client was motivated by racial animus. At most, they've shown he was thoughtless. And thoughtlessness does not meet the threshold for a hate crime. Monica countered. Your Honor, this wasn't thoughtlessness. It was calculated. The defendant targeted a younger, vulnerable student. He did so publicly. And he did so using language that dehumanized Isaiah Brooks. The text messages and social media posts show a pattern of behavior. A pattern rooted in racial bias, even if the defendant never used explicit slurs. Judge Mercer listened. Then ruled. The court finds sufficient evidence to proceed to trial on both charges. Trial is set for April 17th. Matthew's expression didn't change. But his mother's face crumpled. His father put a hand on her shoulder. They left the courtroom without speaking to the press. Angela and Isaiah left through a side exit. They didn't want to talk to anyone either. That night, Isaiah asked his mother a question. Do you think he'll go to jail? Angela didn't know how to answer. I don't know. Do you want him to? She thought about it. I want him to understand what he did. I want him to know it was wrong. And I want him to face consequences. But do you want him to go to jail? Angela looked at her son. What I want is for you to be okay. And if that means he goes to jail, then yes. Isaiah nodded. Went to his room. Angela sat alone in the living room, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The assembly. The box. The note. The months of dismissals and delays. The discovery of the altered records. And now a trial. She didn't know what the outcome would be. But she knew one thing. This time people were paying attention. And that had to mean something. The weeks leading up to trial were tense. Matthew's attorney filed several motions. One to suppress the text messages, arguing they were obtained without proper authorization. Denied. One to exclude Isaiah's testimony, arguing it was unduly prejudicial. Denied. One to sever the harassment charge from the hate crime charge, arguing they should be tried separately. Denied. Judge Mercer was not interested in delays. Monica prepared her case meticulously. She interviewed additional witnesses. She reviewed every piece of evidence. She built timelines, drew connections, prepared exhibits. She met with Angela and Isaiah twice more. Once to go over what to expect at trial. Once to prepare Isaiah for testimony. The defense is going to try to make you doubt yourself, Monica said. They're going to ask the same questions in different ways. They're going to suggest you're exaggerating or misremembering. Don't let them rattle you. Just tell the truth. Isaiah nodded, but he looked scared. Angela held his hand. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Yes, I do, Isaiah replied. Catherine Wells's trial was scheduled first, March 20th. But 2 weeks before the trial date, her attorney reached out to Monica. They wanted to discuss a plea. Monica met with them on March 6th. Catherine's attorney laid out the offer. Ms. Wells is willing to plead guilty to a misdemeanor charge of misconduct in office. In exchange, the felony charge is dropped, and she agrees to resign from her position. Monica considered it. What about cooperation? She's willing to testify about the pressure she felt to resolve the Holloway matter quietly. Pressure from who? The principal, the school board, Holloway's parents. Monica leaned back. I need to think about it. The offer expires in 1 week. Monica called Angela that evening. Explained the situation. What do you think? Angela asked. I think it's a decent offer. She loses her job. She has a criminal record. And her testimony could help convict Matthew. But she doesn't go to jail. No. Angela was quiet. What do you want me to say? I want your input. This is your case too. Is it? Because it feels like it's everyone else's case now. Monica sighed. I understand. But at the end of the day, I have to make the decision that gives us the best chance of justice. And if Catherine testifies, it strengthens our case against Matthew. Then do it. The plea was finalized on March 13th. Catherine Wells pleaded guilty. She was sentenced to 1 year of probation, 200 hours of community service, and she was barred from working in education in Indiana. The resignation was immediate. The school district issued a brief statement. Professional. Detached. It thanked Catherine for her years of service and wished her well. Angela read the statement online. She felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just exhaustion. But Catherine's testimony was now secured, and the trial against Matthew Holloway moved forward. April 17th arrived. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled the back rows. Community members who had been following the case. A few students from the high school. And Angela Brooks sitting in the third row. Alone. Isaiah was not in the courtroom yet. He would be called later. Sequestered until his testimony. Judge Mercer entered. Everyone stood. Please be seated. We are here for the matter of State of Indiana versus Matthew Ryan Holloway. Is the state ready? Monica stood. Yes, Your Honor. Is the defense ready? Robert Klein stood. Yes, Your Honor. Then let's proceed with opening statements. Monica approached the jury box. 12 people. Randomly selected. Screened for bias. Ordinary citizens tasked with deciding Matthew's fate. Monica began. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about choice. Matthew Holloway made a choice. Not once, but repeatedly over the course of months, to target a younger, vulnerable student. He made a choice to mock him. To humiliate him. And to do so in the most public way possible. She paused. The defense will tell you this was a joke. A misunderstanding. Teenage immaturity. But the evidence will show you something different. It will show you a pattern of behavior rooted in bias. Bias against someone Matthew saw as less than. Someone he believed didn't belong. And that bias was not just about money. It was about who Isaiah Brooks is. A young black boy from a single-parent home. Someone Matthew decided was an acceptable target. Monica walked slowly along the jury box. You will hear from Isaiah himself. You will hear what it was like to be singled out. To be mocked. To be handed a box in front of hundreds of people and told he was a charity case. You will see the text messages Matthew sent. The posts he shared. And you will see that this was not a joke. This was cruelty. Calculated. Deliberate. and motivated by the kind of thinking that says some people are worth less than others. She stopped. At the end of this trial, I will ask you to hold Matthew Holloway accountable, not because he's a monster, but because he made choices that caused real harm, and choices that violated the law. Thank you. Monica returned to her seat. Robert Klein stood. He buttoned his jacket, walked to the jury box with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Good morning. My name is Robert Klein and I represent Matthew Holloway. And I want to start by acknowledging something. What Matthew did was wrong. It was hurtful. It was insensitive. And he regrets it deeply. He paused. But this case is not about whether Matthew made a mistake. It's about whether that mistake was a crime. And more specifically, whether it was a hate crime. Robert gestured toward the prosecution table. The state wants you to believe that Matthew targeted Isaiah Brooks because of his race. But the evidence will not support that. What the evidence will show is that Matthew made a poor decision during a stressful time. He participated in a culture of teasing that exists in schools everywhere. And yes, he crossed a line. But crossing a line does not make someone a criminal. Robert's tone softened. You will hear from Matthew himself. He will tell you that he never intended to harm Isaiah. That the box was meant as a joke, however poorly conceived. You will hear from his teachers, his coaches, people who have known him for years, that he is not a hateful person, that he has friends of all backgrounds, that this single incident does not define who he is. He looked at each juror. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a time when words matter, when labels matter. And the label the state is trying to apply to Matthew, hate crime offender, is one that will follow him for the rest of his life. It will affect his education, his employment, his future. And it is not a label that fits the facts of this case. Robert walked back to the defense table. At the end of this trial, I will ask you to find Matthew not guilty, not because what he did was right, but because it does not meet the legal definition of a hate crime. Thank you. He sat. Judge Mercer looked at Monica. Call your first witness. The state calls Catherine Wells. Catherine Wells entered from the side door. She wore a gray blouse and black pants. No jewelry. Hair pulled back. She looked smaller than she had during the arraignment. Diminished. The bailiff swore her in. She sat, folded her hands in her lap. Monica stood at the prosecution table. Please state your name for the record. Catherine Marie Wells. And what was your position at Lincoln Middle School in December 2016? I was the assistant principal. How long had you held that position? 7 years. And what were your responsibilities? I oversaw student discipline, coordinated with teachers on behavioral issues, and managed Title VI compliance. Title VI. Can you explain what that is? It's a federal civil rights law. It requires schools to ensure that students are not discriminated against based on race, color, or national origin. And part of your job was to ensure Lincoln Middle School complied with that law? Yes. Were you involved in the investigation of the incident between Matthew Holloway and Isaiah Brooks? Catherine's voice wavered slightly. Yes. Can you walk the jury through what happened after Mrs. Brooks came to the school? Catherine took a breath. She arrived on Saturday morning, December 17th. She was upset. She had the box Matthew had given Isaiah. She wanted to file a complaint. What did you do? I told her I would investigate. And did you? Yes. I interviewed students who had been at the assembly. I reviewed the charity drive records. And I spoke with Matthew. What did Matthew tell you during that interview? He said it was a joke. That he didn't mean to hurt Isaiah. Did you believe him? Catherine hesitated. I believed he regretted the situation. That's not what I asked. I thought he was minimizing what he'd done. And what did you recommend? A 3-day suspension. Why 3 days? Because the incident was public, targeted, and caused emotional harm. It met the threshold for suspension under our policy. But the suspension was overturned. Yes. Why? Matthew's parents appealed. They argued the punishment was too harsh. And the appeal board agreed? Yes. Were you present during the appeal? No. Only the board members, the superintendent, and the family's attorney. Were you given a chance to defend your recommendation? I submitted a written statement. But I wasn't asked to appear. Monica walked to the evidence table. Picked up a folder. Ms. Wells, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 3. Can you identify this document? Catherine looked at it. It's Matthew Holloway's disciplinary file. And this is the file that was submitted to the appeal board? Yes. Is it complete? Catherine's hands tightened. No. Can you explain? There were entries that should have been included. Prior complaints involving Matthew. But they weren't in this version of the file. Who removed them? Catherine looked down. I did. The courtroom was silent. Monica let the answer hang. Why did you remove them? Because I was told to. By whom? By Principal Donovan. What exactly did he tell you? He said the appeal board would be more likely to overturn the suspension if Matthew's record looked clean. He said it was in everyone's best interest to resolve this quietly. Did you agree with that? No. But I did it anyway. Why? Catherine's voice cracked. Because I was afraid of losing my job. Monica picked up another document. Ms. Wells, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 4. What is this? It's one of the complaints I removed. Filed by a student named Carlos Menendez in October 2014. What was the nature of the complaint? Carlos said Matthew made derogatory comments about his ethnicity. Called him a border hopper. Asked if his family was legal. Was the complaint substantiated? Yes. 2 other students witnessed it. What action was taken? Matthew was given a warning. And required to attend a session on cultural sensitivity. But this complaint wasn't included when the appeal board reviewed his record. No. Were there other complaints? Yes. 3 others. And those were also removed? Yes. So the appeal board made their decision based on incomplete information? Yes. Robert Klein stood. Objection, Your Honor. Leading. I'll rephrase, Monica said. Did the appeal board have access to Matthew's full disciplinary history? No. Thank you. No further questions. Robert Klein approached for cross-examination. He was calm. Professional. Ms. Wells, you've pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of misconduct in office. Is that correct? Yes. And part of your plea agreement requires you to testify here today. Yes. So you have a vested interest in cooperating with the prosecution. Monica stood. Objection. Relevance. Goes to bias, Your Honor. I'll allow it. Robert continued. Ms. Wells, when you removed the complaints from Matthew's file, did you consult the district's policy manual? No. Did you consult an attorney? No. Did you document your decision? No. So you acted unilaterally. I acted on the principal's instruction. But you didn't confirm that instruction in writing. No. And Principal Donovan has denied giving you any such instruction. Isn't that true? Catherine's jaw tightened. He denied it to protect himself. Or perhaps you're misremembering. Perhaps you made this decision on your own and are now trying to shift blame. I'm not. Ms. Wells, how many students did you discipline during your 7 years as assistant principal? I don't know. Hundreds. And in how many of those cases did you alter records? Catherine hesitated. This was the only time. Why? Because I was under pressure. From Principal Donovan. Yes. But you have no evidence of that pressure other than your word. I have my word. And I have no reason to lie. You have every reason to lie. Your plea agreement depends on your cooperation. Monica stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Klein. Robert stepped back. No further questions. Catherine left the stand. She didn't look at anyone as she walked out. Judge Mercer called a 10-minute recess. When court reconvened, Monica called her next witness. The state calls Carlos Menendez. A young man entered the courtroom. Early 20s. Dressed in a button-down shirt and slacks. He was sworn in. Monica began. Mr. Menendez, how old are you? 22. And were you a student at Lincoln Middle School in 2014? Yes. Did you have an interaction with Matthew Holloway during that time? Yes. Can you describe it? Carlos shifted in his seat. It was in the cafeteria. Matthew and some of his friends were at the table next to mine. They started making comments. What kind of comments? About me being Mexican. Asking if I was legal. Saying I should go back where I came from. Did they direct these comments at you? Yes. How did you respond? I told them to stop. But they just laughed. Did you report it? Yes. To the assistant principal. Catherine Wells? Yes. What happened after you reported it? She said she'd look into it. A few days later, she told me Matthew had been talked to. That it wouldn't happen again. Did it happen again? Not to me directly. But I heard he made comments to other kids. Did you feel like the school took your complaint seriously? Carlos paused. At the time I thought they did. But looking back, I don't think anything really changed. Thank you. Robert Klein stood for cross. Mr. Menendez, you said Matthew made comments about you being Mexican. Did he use slurs? He called me a border hopper. Is that a slur? It's offensive. But it's not the same as a slur, is it? I don't know. It hurt. I understand. But my question is whether he used language that is widely recognized as a slur. For example, did he use the word people use for Mexicans that starts with an S? Monica stood. Objection. The witness shouldn't have to repeat slurs in open court. Sustained. Robert adjusted. Mr. Menendez, how many times did Matthew make these comments? Just that one time. And after you reported it, did he ever approach you again? No. Did he apologize? Not to me. But he stopped bothering you? Yes. No further questions. Carlos stepped down. Monica called 3 more witnesses over the next hour. A teacher who had observed Matthew's behavior in class. A student who had been friends with Isaiah. And Patricia Henning, the district investigator. Each added pieces to the narrative. Each painted a picture of a pattern. By the time the first day of trial ended, the jury had heard enough to know this was not a simple case. It was complex, layered, and far from over. The trial resumed the next morning, April 18th. The courtroom was just as crowded. Monica called her key witness. The state calls Isaiah Brooks. The side door opened. Isaiah entered. He looked younger than his 14 years. Small frame. Nervous hands. He walked to the witness stand without looking at anyone. The bailiff swore him in. Isaiah sat. Hands folded tightly in his lap. Monica approached gently. Isaiah, I know this is hard. Just take your time and answer the questions as best you can. Okay. Isaiah nodded. Can you state your name for the record? Isaiah Brooks. How old are you? 14. Where do you go to school? Jefferson High. But in December 2016, you were at Lincoln Middle School? Yes. And you were in 8th grade? Yes. Isaiah, do you know the defendant, Matthew Holloway? Isaiah's eyes flicked toward the defense table. Then away. Yes. How do you know him? He went to the same school. Did you interact with him? Sometimes. Can you describe those interactions? Isaiah swallowed. He would say things. In the hallway. At lunch. What kind of things? That I was poor. That I didn't have nice stuff. That I shouldn't be there. Did he say those things directly to you? Sometimes. Sometimes to other people, but loud enough for me to hear. How did that make you feel? Embarrassed. Did you tell anyone? I told my mom once. But I didn't want to make it a big thing. Why not? Because I thought it would make it worse. Monica paused. Let the jury absorb that. Isaiah, I want to talk about December 16th, 2016. Do you remember that day? Yes. There was an assembly? Yes. Can you tell the jury what happened during that assembly? Isaiah took a breath. We were sitting in the gym. The principal was talking about the charity drive. Then it ended and people started leaving. And I heard someone call my name. Who called your name? Matthew. How many times? 3 times. Maybe more. Was it loud? Yeah. What did you do? I stopped. I didn't want to, but everyone was looking. Then what happened? He came up the bleachers. He had a box. Wrapped like a present. What did he say? He said he got me a Christmas present. Did you want to take it? No. But you did. Yeah. Why? Because everyone was watching. I didn't know what else to do. What was inside the box? Isaiah's voice dropped. $1. And a note. What did the note say? Isaiah looked down. It said, for the charity case. Monica walked to the evidence table. Picked up a plastic evidence bag containing the box and note. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? You may. Monica handed the bag to Isaiah. Is this the box and note you received? Isaiah looked at it. Nodded. Yes. And how did you feel when you read that note? Like everyone was laughing at me. Were they? Some of them. Were there teachers nearby? Yes. Did any of them intervene? No. What did you do after you read the note? I left. Did anyone follow you? No. Did anyone check on you afterward? No. Monica stepped back. Isaiah, had Matthew made comments to you before that day? Yes. How many times? I don't know. A lot. Can you give the jury an example? One time he asked if my mom was too broke to buy me lunch. Where did this happen? In the cafeteria. Were other students around? Yeah. Did anyone say anything? No. Did you report it? No. Why not? Because nothing happens when you report stuff. Monica nodded slowly. Thank you, Isaiah. No further questions. Robert Klein stood. He buttoned his jacket. Approached the witness stand. Isaiah, I'm going to ask you some questions. If you don't understand something, just let me know. Okay. Isaiah nodded. You said Matthew gave you a box with $1 and a note. Did he physically harm you? No. Did he threaten you? No. Did he touch you? No. So the extent of his action was handing you a box? Yes. And inside that box was $1. Real money? Yes. So he gave you something of value? I guess. You guess or he did? He did. Now, the note said, for the charity case. You interpreted that as an insult. It was an insult. But Matthew never explicitly said you were inferior because you're black, did he? Isaiah hesitated. Not exactly. He didn't use a racial slur. No. He didn't say anything about your skin color. No. So the comments he made were about money. About economic status. I guess. Now, you said Matthew made comments to you before the assembly. Can you tell me how many times? I don't know. More than 5. Yeah. More than 10. Maybe. But you never reported any of these comments to a teacher or administrator. No. Because you said nothing happens when you report stuff. But how do you know nothing happens if you never reported it? Isaiah looked confused. I just know. But you don't have any actual experience with reporting, do you? No. So it's possible that if you had reported it, something would have been done. I don't know. Isaiah, do you have friends at school? A few. Are any of them white? Some. Do they treat you differently because you're black? No. So not all white students treated you badly. No. Just Matthew. And some of his friends. But mostly Matthew. Yes. And you believe he targeted you because you're black? I think so. But you're not certain. I'm certain he didn't like me. But you don't know why. Isaiah's voice strengthened. I know why. How? Because of the way he looked at me. The way he talked about me. But he never said it was because you're black. He didn't have to. Robert paused. No further questions. Isaiah stepped down. Angela met him in the hallway. Wrapped her arms around him. He didn't cry. But he held on. The trial continued. Monica called 4 more witnesses that afternoon. A classmate of Matthew's who testified that Matthew had referred to Isaiah as, that kid who doesn't belong here. A text message expert who walked the jury through the messages Matthew had sent. A school counselor who explained the psychological impact of sustained harassment. And finally, a professor from Indiana University who specialized in hate crimes. The professor's testimony was lengthy, technical, but crucial. Professor Lin, can you explain to the jury what constitutes a hate crime under Indiana law? A hate crime occurs when someone commits an offense and is motivated, in whole or in part, by the victim's race, religion, color, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, or ancestry. Does the perpetrator have to use explicit racial language for it to be a hate crime? No. The motivation can be demonstrated through a pattern of behavior, the context of the incident, and the surrounding circumstances. Can you give an example? Certainly. If someone vandalizes property in a neighborhood and targets homes owned by black families, that can be a hate crime even if they never write a racial slur. The targeting itself demonstrates racial motivation. And in a case involving harassment, how would you determine whether race was a motivating factor? You'd look at who was targeted, how they were targeted, the language used, and whether there's evidence the perpetrator held biased views. Monica displayed the text messages on a screen. Professor, I'm showing you these messages sent by the defendant. In your professional opinion, do these suggest racial bias? Professor Lin reviewed them. Yes. The language about people not deserving help, about taking rather than giving, combined with the fact that the victim is black and the perpetrator is white, suggests racial bias. Even though the defendant never uses a racial slur? Correct. Bias often manifests through coded language, especially among younger people who understand that explicit slurs are socially unacceptable. Thank you. Robert Klein cross-examined. Professor Lin, you've never met my client, have you? No. You've never interviewed him? No. You've never conducted a psychological evaluation of him? No. So your opinion is based entirely on text messages and second-hand accounts. That's typically how expert analysis works in legal proceedings. But you can't say with certainty what was in Matthew Holloway's mind when he gave Isaiah Brooks that box. No one can say with absolute certainty what's in another person's mind. But we can infer intent from behavior. Infer, not prove. Inference is a standard part of legal analysis. But it's not proof. It's evidence. And evidence is what juries consider. Robert didn't press further. The day ended. Judge Mercer adjourned until the following morning. Angela left the courthouse exhausted. Isaiah was quiet on the drive home. When they pulled into the driveway, he finally spoke. "Do you think they believe me?" Angela turned off the car. "I think they heard you. And that's what matters. But do you think they believe me?" Angela looked at her son. "Yes, I do." He nodded, got out of the car, went inside. Angela sat alone for a moment, hoping she was right. The trial entered its third day. April 19th. The defense began presenting its case. Robert Klein called Matthew Holloway to the stand. Matthew stood, walked to the witness stand. He looked composed, confident. The bailiff swore him in. Robert began. "Matthew, how old are you?" 18. "Where are you currently enrolled in school?" "Indiana State University." "What are you studying?" "Business administration." "And before enrolling at Indiana State, where did you attend high school?" "Lincoln High School." "Were you a good student?" "I think so. I was on the honor roll. Played football." "Did you have friends of different backgrounds?" "Yes." "Different races?" "Yes." "Can you describe your friend group?" "It was pretty diverse. I had friends who were white, black, Latino. We all hung out together." "Did you ever have conflicts with any of them based on race?" "No." "Matthew, I want to talk about Isaiah Brooks. Did you know him?" "I knew who he was." "Were you friends?" "No. We didn't really talk." "Why not?" "We just didn't. Different grades. Different interests." Matthew, on December 16, 2016, you gave Isaiah a box during a school assembly. Can you tell the jury why you did that? Matthew shifted slightly. "It was meant to be a joke. We'd been talking about the charity drive for weeks, and someone mentioned that Isaiah hadn't brought anything. I thought it would be funny to give him something, like a gag gift." "Did you intend to hurt him?" "No. I honestly didn't think it would be a big deal." "Why not?" "Because people joke around all the time. I'd been on the receiving end of jokes before. I didn't think this was different. But it was different. I know that now." "When did you realize it?" "When I found out how upset Isaiah was, and how upset his mom was. I felt terrible." "Did you apologize?" "I tried to. I wrote a letter. But I was told not to give it to him directly." "Why?" "The school said it could make things worse." "Do you still have that letter?" "Yes." Robert walked to the defense table, picked up a document. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter this as Defense Exhibit A." Judge Mercer reviewed it. "Any objection?" Monica stood. "No objection." Robert handed the letter to Matthew. "Can you read the first paragraph?" Matthew cleared his throat. "Dear Isaiah, I want to apologize for what I did at the assembly. I realize now that it was hurtful and inappropriate. I never meant to make you feel bad, but I understand that my actions did exactly that. I'm sorry." "Did you mean that apology?" "Yes." "Matthew, the prosecution has presented text messages you sent and social media posts you made. Do you remember those?" "Yes." "Do you regret them?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because they were immature. I was trying to be funny or edgy, but I see now that they were offensive." "Were any of those messages motivated by race?" "No." "Then what were they motivated by?" "Just stupidity. Trying to fit in. Saying things without thinking about how they'd sound." "Matthew, do you consider yourself racist?" "No. Absolutely not." "Do you believe one race is superior to another?" "No." "Did you target Isaiah Brooks because he's black?" "No." "Then why did you target him?" Matthew paused. "I don't know if I'd say I targeted him. I made a bad joke, and it spiraled. But you did make comments to him before the assembly." "Yeah. And I regret that too." "What were those comments about?" "Honestly, I don't remember exactly what I said. But it was probably about the charity drive. About him not participating. Not about his race." "No. Thank you." No further questions. Monica stood for cross-examination. She approached slowly. "Mr. Holloway, you said you wrote an apology letter but were told not to give it to Isaiah. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Who told you not to give it to him?" "Ms. Wells, the assistant principal." "And you followed that instruction?" Yes. Did you ever try to apologize in person? No. Why not? Because I was told not to contact him. But you saw him at school. Yeah. Did you ever approach him? Even just to say you were sorry? No. Because you were told not to. Right. But you weren't ordered not to. You were advised. I guess. So you could have apologized if you wanted to. Matthew hesitated. I could have. But I didn't want to make things worse. Or you didn't want to face him. That's not fair. Isn't it? You gave him that box in front of hundreds of people. But you couldn't apologize in person. Matthew didn't answer. Monica picked up a printed screenshot. Mr. Holloway, I'm showing you a text message you sent on December 10th. You wrote, Brooks still hasn't brought anything else. Kid's probably on the donation list himself. Do you remember sending this? Yes. Who did you send it to? A friend. Was this friend black? No. Was Isaiah the only student you made comments about regarding the charity drive? I don't know. Maybe. You don't know, or he was? I think he was. Why? I don't know. You don't know why you singled out one student and made multiple comments about him over several weeks. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? It was just, people were talking about him. Who? I don't remember. But you remember that people were talking about him. Yeah. And you joined in. I guess. Mr. Holloway, you shared a meme on your social media on December 14th. It showed a caricature of a black child. The caption read, Guess some people just take, they don't give. Do you remember that? Matthew's face tightened. Yeah. Was that about Isaiah? No. Then what was it about? It was just a meme. I didn't think about it. You didn't think about the fact that you posted an image of a black child with a caption about taking? No. I just thought it was funny. Funny. At the time. Mr. Holloway, you testified that you have friends of different races. I do. Can you name them? Matthew paused. There's Devin. And Marcus. Marcus. Is he black? Yes. When's the last time you spoke to Marcus? I don't know. A while. Before or after you were charged? Before. Have you spoken to him since? No. Why not? We just haven't. Or he doesn't want to speak to you. Robert stood. Objection. Speculation. Sustained. Monica stepped back. Mr. Holloway, you said this was just a joke that spiraled. But you made comments for weeks. You posted memes. You sent messages. And then you publicly humiliated a 13-year-old boy in front of the entire school. That's not a joke that spiraled. That's a pattern. I didn't see it that way. But that's what it was. Matthew didn't answer. No further questions. Matthew stepped down. His hands were shaking. Robert called 3 more witnesses. Matthew's football coach. A teacher who described him as respectful. And a classmate who testified that Matthew had never made racist comments around him. But none of them could explain away the messages, the posts, the pattern. By the end of the day, the defense rested. Closing arguments were scheduled for the next morning. Angela didn't sleep that night. She lay awake, replaying everything she'd heard. Isaiah's testimony, Matthew's excuses, the evidence. She wanted to believe the jury would see the truth. But she'd learned over the past year that the system didn't always work the way it should. The next morning, Monica delivered her closing argument. She stood before the jury. Calm, focused. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 3 days, you've heard a lot of testimony. You've seen text messages, social media posts. You've heard from Isaiah Brooks himself. And you've heard from the defendant. She paused. The defense wants you to believe this was just a teenager making a stupid mistake. That Matthew Holloway is a good kid who made a bad joke. But the evidence tells a different story. Monica walked along the jury box. This wasn't one mistake. It was a series of choices. Matthew chose to comment on Isaiah's economic status. He chose to share a racist meme. He chose to text his friends about Isaiah. And he chose to humiliate him in front of the entire school. She stopped. The defense argues that Matthew never used a racial slur. That he never explicitly said he targeted Isaiah because he's black. But the law doesn't require that. The law requires that race be a motivating factor. And the evidence shows it was. Monica gestured toward the evidence table. Look at the meme Matthew posted. A caricature of a black child with a caption about taking. Look at the messages he sent. The language he used. The fact that Isaiah was the only student he targeted. She turned back to the jury. Matthew Holloway wants you to believe he's colorblind. that he doesn't see race. But the reality is he saw Isaiah Brooks's race. And it mattered to him. It mattered when he decided Isaiah was an acceptable target. It mattered when he chose to mock him. And it mattered when he stood in front of the entire school and handed him a box labeled, "For the charity case." Monica's voice was steady. This is a hate crime. Not because Matthew is a monster, but because he made choices rooted in bias. Choices that violated Isaiah's civil rights. Choices that caused real harm. She looked at each juror. You have the power to hold him accountable. To say that this behavior is not acceptable. That racism, even when it's subtle, even when it hides behind jokes, has consequences. I ask you to find Matthew Holloway guilty on both counts. Thank you. Monica sat. Robert Klein stood. He walked to the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by acknowledging something. Matthew Holloway made a mistake. A significant one. He hurt Isaiah Brooks. And he regrets it deeply. Robert's tone was earnest. But regret is not the same as criminality. And that's what you're here to decide. Not whether Matthew should have behaved differently, but whether his behavior constitutes a crime. Specifically, a hate crime. He paused. The prosecution wants you to believe that Matthew is a racist. They've shown you text messages, a meme, comments he made, and they've asked you to infer from all of that Matthew targeted Isaiah because of his race. Robert shook his head. But inference is not proof. The fact is, Matthew never used a racial slur. He never said Isaiah was inferior because he's black. He never expressed hatred toward black people. What he did was make insensitive comments about economic status. Robert walked back toward the defense table. Now, I'm not saying that's okay. It's not. But insensitivity is not a hate crime. And economic status is not a protected class under Indiana law. He turned back to the jury. The prosecution has painted Matthew as a villain. But the truth is more complicated. Matthew is an 18-year-old who made a poor decision during a stressful time. He got caught up in a culture of teasing that exists in schools everywhere. And yes, he crossed a line. But crossing a line does not make someone a hate crime offender. Robert's voice softened. You've heard from people who know Matthew. His coach. His teacher. They described him as respectful. Kind. Not someone who harbors racial hatred. He looked at each juror. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew Holloway's future is in your hands. A conviction on these charges will follow him for the rest of his life. It will define him. And it will close doors that should remain open for a young man who made a mistake. Robert stepped back. I ask you to find him not guilty. Not because what he did was right, but because it doesn't meet the legal definition of a hate crime. Thank you. Robert sat. Judge Mercer looked at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard all the evidence. You've heard the arguments. Now it's your responsibility to deliberate and reach a verdict. Remember, the defendant is presumed innocent. The burden of proof rests with the state. You must be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt. She reviewed the jury instructions, explained the elements of each charge, then dismissed them to deliberate. The jury left. The courtroom emptied. Angela sat alone in the hallway, waiting. Isaiah was at school. David had offered to stay with her, but she told him it was okay. She wanted to be alone. The hours dragged. 1, 2, 3. At 4:47 p.m., the bailiff emerged. We have a verdict. Angela's heart raced. She called David. He said he'd be there in 10 minutes. She texted her sister. Asked her to pick up Isaiah from school. The courtroom filled quickly. Reporters filed in first. Then community members who had been waiting outside. Matthew arrived with his parents. His father's face was unreadable. His mother looked pale. Angela sat in the same seat she'd occupied throughout the trial. Third row. Right side. David slipped in beside her just as Judge Mercer entered. Everyone stood. Please be seated, Judge Mercer said. Bring in the jury. The 12 jurors filed in. None of them looked at Matthew. Angela's hands gripped the edge of the bench. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Mercer asked. The foreman stood. An older man. Gray hair. Glasses. We have, Your Honor. Please hand it to the bailiff. The bailiff took the verdict form. Walked it to Judge Mercer. She reviewed it. Her expression revealed nothing. She handed it back to the bailiff. The defendant will rise. Matthew stood. His attorney beside him. His father's hand on his shoulder. Judge Mercer looked at the foreman. On the charge of criminal harassment, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty. Matthew's mother made a sound. A small gasp. Matthew's face went pale. On the charge of committing a hate crime, how do you find? The courtroom was silent. Angela held her breath. We find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Not loudly, but there was movement. Whispers. Reactions. Matthew sat down heavily. His mother was crying. His father's jaw was tight. Angela closed her eyes. Felt tears on her cheeks. Judge Mercer struck her gavel. Order. I will have order in this courtroom. The noise subsided. Judge Mercer looked at both attorneys. Sentencing will be scheduled within 30 days. The defendant will remain on bail under the current conditions until that time. This court is adjourned. She stood. Left the bench. Matthew's family gathered around him. His mother sobbing openly now. His father speaking to the attorneys in a low, urgent voice. Angela stood. David put a hand on her shoulder. You okay? She nodded. Couldn't speak. They left through the side exit. Avoided the reporters. Got to David's car. Angela sat in the passenger seat. Finally let herself cry. Not from relief. Not from joy. From exhaustion. From the weight of everything that had led to this moment. He was convicted, she said quietly. Yes. They believed Isaiah. Yes. She wiped her eyes. What happens now? Sentencing. The judge will consider the sentencing guidelines, the evidence, and any statements from both sides. What's the maximum? For both charges combined? Up to 3 years. But he's a first-time offender. It could be less. How much less? I don't know. Judge Mercer will decide. Angela nodded. Stared out the window. I need to call Isaiah. She pulled out her phone. Dialed. Isaiah answered on the second ring. Mom? He was convicted. On both charges. Silence. Then, really? Yes. More silence. How do you feel? Angela asked. I don't know. Weird. Good weird or bad weird? Just weird. Angela understood. We'll talk when I get home. Okay. They hung up. David drove her home. When Angela walked in, Isaiah was sitting on the couch. Television off. Just sitting. She sat beside him. You okay? Yeah. You sure? He looked at her. I thought I'd feel different. How did you think you'd feel? I don't know. Happy maybe. But I don't. Angela put her arm around him. That's okay. Is it over? Not yet. There's still sentencing. But yeah, it's almost over. Isaiah nodded. Leaned against her. They sat like that for a long time. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for May 15th. In the weeks leading up to it, both sides submitted statements. Monica filed a sentencing memorandum. It outlined Matthew's conduct, the impact on Isaiah, the need for accountability. It recommended 30 months. Matthew's attorneys filed their own memorandum. It emphasized his youth, his lack of prior record, his remorse. It recommended probation with community service. Angela was asked if she wanted to give a victim impact statement. She said yes. She spent days writing it, revising it, trying to find the words. Isaiah declined to give a statement. I already said everything in court, he told his mother. She didn't push. On May 15th, the courtroom was once again full. Not as crowded as the verdict day, but full enough. Angela sat in her usual spot. Isaiah had chosen to stay home. Matthew arrived with his parents. He wore a suit, looked thinner than he had at trial. Judge Mercer entered. Everyone stood. Please be seated. We are here for sentencing in the matter of State of Indiana versus Matthew Ryan Holloway. I have reviewed the sentencing memoranda from both parties. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation report. And I will now hear statements before imposing sentence. She looked at Monica. Does the state wish to be heard? Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Angela Brooks would like to make a victim impact statement. Very well. Mrs. Brooks, please come forward. Angela stood. Walked to the podium. Her hands shook as she unfolded the paper she'd written. She cleared her throat. Began to read. Your Honor, my name is Angela Brooks. I am Isaiah's mother. And I am here today to tell you what the defendant's actions cost my son. She paused. Isaiah was 13 years old when this began. He was a quiet kid. Minded his own business. Tried to stay out of trouble. But Matthew Holloway decided he was a target. Not because Isaiah did anything wrong, but because of who he is. Angela's voice strengthened. 4 months, my son came home from school and said nothing. He kept it inside. He didn't want to worry me. He didn't want to make it worse. And when it finally exploded in that gymnasium, When he was humiliated in front of everyone, the school told me it was being handled. They told me it would be resolved. But nothing was resolved. She looked up from the paper. My son's grades dropped. He stopped sleeping. He stopped talking to me. And even now, after the trial, after the conviction, he still carries what happened. He still wakes up at night. He still flinches when someone calls his name in a crowded room. Angela's eyes moved to Matthew. The defendant wants this court to believe he's sorry, that he's learned his lesson. Maybe he has. But my son is the one paying the price, not Matthew Holloway. My son is the one who has to live with this, who has to rebuild his sense of safety, who has to figure out how to trust that the world won't humiliate him again. She looked back at Judge Mercer. Your Honor, I'm not asking for vengeance. I'm asking for accountability. I'm asking that this court send a message that what happened to my son matters, that he matters, and that no one should be able to do what Matthew Holloway did and walk away without real consequences. Angela folded the paper. Thank you. She returned to her seat. Judge Mercer nodded. Does the defense wish to be heard? Robert Klein stood. Yes, Your Honor. Matthew Holloway would like to address the court. Very well. Matthew stood, walked to the podium. He looked at Judge Mercer, then briefly at Angela, then down. Your Honor, I know I made a terrible mistake. I know I hurt Isaiah. And I know that saying I'm sorry isn't enough. But I'm sorry. I've thought about what I did every day since it happened. And I wish I could take it back. His voice was steady, rehearsed. I was immature. I was trying to fit in. And I made choices that I regret. But I'm not the person the prosecution made me out to be. I'm not a racist. I don't hate anyone. I just made a really bad decision. He paused. I know I have to face consequences, and I accept that. But I'm asking for a chance to learn from this, to do better, to show that I can be better. He sat down. Judge Mercer was silent for a moment. Then she spoke. Mr. Holloway, please stand. Matthew stood. Judge Mercer looked at him. I have presided over this case from the beginning. I have heard the evidence. I have listened to the testimony. And I have reviewed everything submitted to this court. Her voice was firm. What you did was not a joke. It was not a lapse in judgment. It was a calculated act of cruelty directed at a child who had done nothing to you. You chose him because you saw him as vulnerable, because you believed you could get away with it. And you did get away with it, for a while, because the adults who should have protected Isaiah failed him. Matthew's face was pale. But this court will not fail him. The jury found you guilty of criminal harassment and of committing a hate crime. Those are serious charges. They carry serious consequences. And while I have considered your age, your lack of prior record, and the statements made on your behalf, I have also considered the harm you caused. Judge Mercer leaned forward slightly. You may believe you are not a racist, Mr. Holloway, but your actions were racist. Your words were racist. And the impact on Isaiah Brooks was devastating. The fact that you do not see yourself as racist does not excuse what you did. It makes it worse, because it means you do not fully understand the gravity of your actions. She straightened. It is the judgment of this court that you are sentenced as follows. On the count of criminal harassment, you are sentenced to 18 months in the Department of Correction. On the count of committing a hate crime, you are sentenced to an additional 12 months, to run consecutively. That is a total of 30 months. Matthew's mother sobbed. His father put his arm around her. Matthew stood frozen. Judge Mercer continued. However, I am suspending 12 months of that sentence. You will serve 18 months. Upon your release, you will be on probation for 2 years. During that time, you will complete 200 hours of community service. You will attend counseling focused on bias and empathy. And you will have no contact with Isaiah Brooks or his family. She paused. Additionally, upon completion of your sentence, you will be required to register as a hate crime offender under Indiana law. That registration will remain on your record. Matthew's knees buckled slightly. His attorney steadied him. You will report to the Department of Correction within 10 days. Do you understand? Matthew's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. This court is adjourned. Judge Mercer stood, left the bench. Matthew's family surrounded him. His mother was inconsolable. His father was speaking urgently to the attorneys. Angela sat in her seat. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel victorious. She felt tired. David walked her out. You okay? He asked again. I don't know. That was a strong sentence. Stronger than I expected. Is it enough? David didn't answer right away. I don't know if any sentence would be enough. But it's something. Angela nodded. They walked to the car. She called Isaiah, told him what had happened. He was quiet. Then he said, "He's going to jail?" "Yes, for a year and a half. And then? Probation, community service, counseling. Does that mean it's over?" Angela thought about that question. The same question he'd asked before. "Yes," she said. "It's over." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure it was true. Because the trial was over. The sentencing was done. But the impact would last. For Isaiah. For her. For everyone who had been part of this. Matthew Holloway reported to the Indiana Department of Correction on May 25, 2017. He was processed, given a uniform, assigned to a facility for nonviolent offenders. His parents visited once a week, brought him books, letters from friends, told him it would be okay, that he'd get through this. Matthew served his sentence, kept his head down, attended the required programs, did what he was told. He was released on November 23, 2018. 18 months. Good behavior. When he walked out, his parents were waiting. They drove him home. He moved back into his childhood bedroom. Started looking for work. But everywhere he applied, the background check came back. Hate crime offender. The jobs disappeared. The college scholarship he'd lost couldn't be reinstated. His friends had moved on. Matthew spent his days fulfilling his probation requirements. Community service at a food bank. Counseling sessions he attended but barely participated in. And registration. Every year he had to register, provide his address, confirm his status. It followed him. Everywhere. Isaiah Brooks finished his freshman year of high school in June 2017. His grades had improved. Not back to where they'd been before, but better. He stayed in robotics club, made a few friends, started to find his footing again. But the trial had changed him. He was quieter now, more guarded. He didn't talk about what had happened unless he had to. And he never forgot. In the hallways he still tensed when someone called his name. In crowded spaces he looked for exits. And at night sometimes he still woke up thinking about the gymnasium, about the box, about the laughter. His mother noticed. She didn't push him to talk, but she watched him, made sure he knew she was there. And slowly, over the months and years that followed, Isaiah learned to carry what had happened. Not forget, just carry. Angela Brooks continued working her 2 jobs. The case had drained her. Financially, emotionally, but she didn't regret it. She had fought for her son, and she had won. Not completely, not perfectly, but she had won. In December 2017, exactly 1 year after the assembly, the school district implemented the corrective action plan mandated by the state. New policies, new training, a new reporting system. The changes were real, but they came too late for Isaiah. Catherine Wells never returned to education. After her conviction, she took a job in retail, then in administrative work at a small nonprofit. She kept her head down, avoided attention. The conviction stayed on her record, a permanent mark. She never spoke publicly about the case, never gave interviews, and as far as anyone knew, she never contacted Matthew Holloway again. Principal Donovan, the man Catherine had accused of pressuring her to alter the records, denied the allegations until the end. He was never charged. The state investigation found insufficient evidence to prosecute him, but the cloud of suspicion remained. He retired in 2019, early, quietly, and the district didn't fight it. The case became a reference point in Indiana, in discussions about school discipline, about how systems fail vulnerable students, about what happens when bias hides behind bureaucracy. Legal scholars cited it. Advocacy groups used it as an example. And in classrooms across the state, teachers were trained on how to recognize and respond to harassment. But for the people at the center of it, Angela, Isaiah, even Matthew, the case wasn't a reference point. It was their life. David Ortiz continued to take on civil rights cases. Pro bono. When he could. The work didn't pay well. But it mattered. And every time he saw a case that reminded him of Isaiah's, he thought about the box. The note. The way the system had tried to look away. And he didn't let them. Monica Reyes prosecuted dozens more cases. Hate crimes. Civil rights violations. Complex cases that other prosecutors avoided. She retired in 2024. But before she did, she kept a folder on her desk. A reminder. Inside was a photograph. Not of a courtroom. Not of a verdict. But of a letter. From Angela Brooks. Sent in 2018. Read. Thank you for believing us when no one else did. Monica never framed the letter. Never displayed it. but she kept it, because it reminded her why the work mattered. Judge Diane Mercer continued to preside over cases, civil and criminal. She retired in 2022. In her final interview with the local paper, a reporter asked her about the cases that stayed with her. She mentioned 3. One was State of Indiana versus Matthew Holloway. That case reminded me, she said, that justice is not about making people feel good. It's about accountability. And sometimes accountability is uncomfortable. For everyone. The reporter asked if she thought the sentence was fair. Judge Mercer paused. Fair is a complicated word. But it was just. She declined to elaborate. Isaiah Brooks graduated from high school in 2020. The ceremony was held outside because of the pandemic. Angela sat in a folding chair, wearing a mask, watching her son walk across a makeshift stage. He didn't smile for the camera. But when he took his diploma and looked at her, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Pride. He enrolled in community college that fall, studied computer science, kept to himself, made a few friends, and slowly he began to build a life that wasn't defined by what had happened to him. He still thought about it, on certain days, in certain moments, but it didn't consume him anymore. Matthew Holloway completed his probation in 2020. 2 years. No violations. His record was complete. He had done what the court required. But the registry remained. And the label remained. He moved out of his parents' house in 2021. Found work in a warehouse. Night shift. It was the only place that would hire him. He didn't talk about the case. Didn't try to explain. Just worked. Came home. Repeated. His parents still believed he'd been treated unfairly. That the sentence was too harsh. That he'd been made an example of. But Matthew stopped arguing with them. He knew what he'd done. Even if he couldn't fully articulate why. And he knew there was no going back. In 2023, a documentary filmmaker reached out to Angela Brooks. She was working on a project about school-to-prison pipelines and systemic failures in education. She wanted to interview Angela and Isaiah about their case. Angela declined. So did Isaiah. We're not interested in being symbols, Angela told the filmmaker politely. We just want to live our lives. The filmmaker thanked her, said she understood, and moved on to other stories. Because there were always other stories. Other families. Other children failed by systems that should have protected them. In the years that followed, Angela thought often about the moment she'd found the box in the trash. The crumpled wrapping paper. The dollar bill. The note. She thought about how close she'd come to throwing it away. To letting it go. To telling Isaiah to just move on. And she thought about what would have happened if she had. Matthew would have graduated. Gone to college. Built a life. And Isaiah would have carried that moment alone. Unacknowledged. Unvalidated. Invisible. She was glad she hadn't thrown it away. Not because the outcome had been perfect. It hadn't. But because someone had finally said it mattered. That Isaiah mattered. And that was something. By 2024, the case had faded from public attention. The news articles were archived. The social media posts deleted. The outrage moved on to newer stories. But the people involved carried it still. In different ways. In different measures. Angela carried it as a reminder that fighting back was possible. Even when the system resisted. Even when it felt impossible. Isaiah carried it as a scar. Not open. Not bleeding. But there. A permanent mark that shaped how he moved through the world. Matthew carried it as a weight. A consequence. A label he couldn't remove. Whether he'd learned from it, truly learned, was unclear. He said the right things when required. Attended the sessions. Completed the hours. But understanding and compliance are not the same thing. And no one could say for certain what was in his heart. In December 2024, Angela Brooks was cleaning out a closet. She found a box. Not the box from the assembly. That one had been entered as evidence and never returned. But a box of papers from the case. Court documents. Transcripts. Letters from people she'd never met who had read about the case and wanted to express support. She sat on the floor. Read through them. Some made her cry. Some made her angry all over again. And some reminded her that what had happened to Isaiah had resonated beyond their family. That other parents had seen themselves in her. Other children had seen themselves in Isaiah. And that mattered. She didn't keep the box. She'd held onto it long enough. Instead, she took the letters that meant the most, put them in a folder, and gave the folder to Isaiah. In case you ever want to remember, she said. He took it, didn't open it, put it on a shelf in his apartment. Maybe someday, he said. She nodded. Understood. On December 26, 2024, 8 years after the assembly, Isaiah Brooks was at work. He'd graduated from community college. Found a job doing IT support for a nonprofit. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And it was his. A coworker asked him about his holiday. It was quiet, Isaiah said. Good quiet or bad quiet? Isaiah smiled slightly. Good quiet. The coworker nodded. Went back to work. Isaiah did the same. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't think about the box, or the note, or the assembly. He just worked, went about his day, lived his life, because that's what healing looked like. Not forgetting, not pretending it hadn't happened, but not being defined by it either. That same day, Angela Brooks was at home. She'd taken the day off, not for any particular reason, just because she could. She made coffee, sat on the porch, watched the neighborhood, and thought about how far they'd come. The case was over, had been over for years, but the impact lingered, in the policies that changed, in the conversations that happened, in the small moments when someone spoke up instead of staying silent. She didn't know if Matthew Holloway ever thought about Isaiah, if he truly understood what he'd done, or if he'd just learned to perform remorse. But it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that Isaiah had survived, that he was building a life, that he knew his mother had fought for him, and that somewhere in a courtroom in Indiana, a judge had said his pain mattered. That was enough. It had to be. The story of Isaiah Brooks and Matthew Holloway was not a story with a neat ending. There was no redemption arc. No moment where everyone learned a lesson and moved on healed. It was messier than that. More complicated. Because real life is. Isaiah would always carry the memory of that assembly. The moment his name was called. The laughter. The box. But he also carried other things. The knowledge that his mother had believed him. That a lawyer had taken his case for free. That a prosecutor had fought for him. That a jury had listened. And that a judge had refused to let cruelty hide behind the excuse of youth. Those things mattered too. Matthew Holloway would carry his conviction. The registry. The label. The closed doors. Whether that would change him, truly change him, remained to be seen. But the consequences were real. And they were permanent. And maybe that was the point. Not revenge. Not punishment for its own sake. But accountability. A recognition that actions have consequences. That harm is harm even when it's committed by someone young. Even when it's framed as a joke. The case had forced a reckoning. Not just for Matthew. But for the school. For the system. For everyone who had been too willing to look away. And in that reckoning something shifted. Not everything. Not enough. But something. Years later, when people searched for the case online, they found archived articles. Court documents. A few think pieces from legal scholars. But they didn't find the people. Angela had no social media presence. Isaiah kept his accounts private. Matthew had disappeared from public view. The story had been told. The verdict delivered. The sentence served. And now, the people at the center of it were just trying to live. Because that's what comes after. Not closure. Not a tidy resolution. Just life. Complicated. Scarred. But continuing. And in the end, maybe that was the real story. Not the trial. Not the verdict. But what came after. The quiet rebuilding. The slow healing. The decision to keep going even when the world had tried to break you. Isaiah Brooks kept going. Angela Brooks kept going. And somewhere Matthew Holloway kept going too. Different paths. Different futures. All shaped by a moment in a gymnasium in December 2016. A moment that could have been dismissed. Could have been forgotten. But wasn't. Because one mother refused to let it be. And a judge decided that cruelty, even when it wore the mask of youth, even when it hid behind the holidays, deserved to be called what it was. Cruel. Calculated. And criminal. That refusal. That decision. That was where justice lived. Not in revenge. Not in retribution. But in the simple, powerful act of saying, what happened to you mattered. You mattered. And no one gets to take that away. Cases like this often go unnoticed until someone documents what others dismiss. If stories like this matter to you, and you believe accountability should apply at every level, consider subscribing for more courtroom narratives that examine how justice unfolds when overlooked details finally come to light. The weeks after sentencing were strange. Not celebratory. Not final. Just strange. Angela returned to work the Monday after the hearing. Her coworkers asked how she was doing. She said fine. They nodded. Didn't press. Most of them didn't know the details of the case. Just that she'd been dealing with something at her son's school. something that had gone to court. They were kind, respectful of her privacy, and Angela was grateful for that. She didn't want to relive it, didn't want to explain. She just wanted to move forward. But moving forward was harder than she'd anticipated, because the trial had consumed so much time, energy, emotional bandwidth. And now that it was over, there was a void, a strange empty space where the fight had been. Isaiah felt it too. He'd expected to feel relief once the verdict came in, once Matthew was sentenced. But relief didn't come. Instead, there was just nothing, an absence where the weight had been. It should have felt lighter, but it didn't. It just felt different. In June 2017, school let out for the summer. Isaiah spent most of his days at home, reading, playing video games, occasionally hanging out with friends from robotics club. But he was restless. Angela noticed. "You should do something," she said one evening. "Get out of the house." "Like what?" "I don't know. Get a job. Volunteer. Something." "I don't want to." "Why not?" Isaiah shrugged. Didn't have an answer. Or didn't want to give it. The truth was, he didn't feel ready to be around people. Didn't trust that they wouldn't ask questions. Wouldn't recognize him from the news coverage. Wouldn't judge him. Angela understood. But she also knew he couldn't hide forever. "What if we went somewhere?" she suggested. "Just for a few days. Get away." Isaiah looked up. "Where?" "I don't know. Somewhere different. Somewhere we've never been." He thought about it. "Okay." They left the following week. Drove to Michigan, a small town near the lake. They rented a cabin. It was cheap, basic, but it was away. And that was all they needed. For 3 days they didn't talk about the case. Didn't talk about school. Didn't talk about anything heavy. They just existed. Walked along the beach. Ate at a diner. Watched the sunset. And for those 3 days, Isaiah felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. It didn't last. Peace never does. But it was enough to remind him that it was possible. That maybe, eventually, normal could return. When they got back, Angela received a call from a reporter. A journalist from Indianapolis. She was working on a piece about hate crimes in Indiana. She wanted to interview Angela and Isaiah. Angela declined politely. "We're not interested in doing interviews." "I understand," the reporter said. "But your case is important. It could help other families. Then write about the case. But leave us out of it." The reporter thanked her. Said she understood. And Angela hung up. She'd meant what she said to the documentary filmmaker the year before. They weren't symbols. They were people. And they deserved to live their lives without being defined by the worst thing that had happened to them. The reporter wrote the piece anyway. It was published in August 2017. It focused on the legal aspects of the case. The challenges of prosecuting hate crimes. The gaps in school policy. It mentioned Isaiah and Angela by name. But it didn't include interviews. Didn't include photos. And Angela was grateful for that small mercy. She didn't read the article. Neither did Isaiah. They'd lived it. They didn't need to read about it. In September, Isaiah started his sophomore year. New building. New teachers. Same anxiety. But he pushed through. Showed up. Did the work. And slowly, over the months, he found a rhythm. He joined the robotics club again. This time he took on a leadership role. Not because he wanted attention, but because he realized he was good at it. And being good at something helped. His grades improved. Not back to where they'd been in 7th grade. But solid. Respectable. Angela was proud. She told him so. He shrugged it off the way teenagers do. But she could see he appreciated it. In October, Angela received an email from the State Department of Education. They were conducting a follow-up review. Checking to ensure the district had implemented the corrective action plan. They wanted to interview her. She agreed. The interview took place over the phone. A state official asked her about the district's response. Whether she'd seen changes. Whether Isaiah felt safer. Angela answered honestly. "I don't know if he feels safer," she said. "He's at a different school now. But the changes they made came too late for him." "Do you think the changes are meaningful?" "I think they're necessary. Whether they're meaningful depends on whether they're enforced." The official thanked her. Said her feedback would be included in the report. Angela didn't know if it would matter. But she'd said what needed to be said. In November, Matthew Holloway was adjusting to life in the correctional facility. It wasn't violent. Not like the prisons you see on television. But it wasn't easy either. He shared a cell with another young man. Non-violent offender. Drug possession. They didn't talk much. Matthew kept to himself. attended the required programs, bias education, conflict resolution, anger management. He sat through the sessions, answered when called on. But he didn't engage. Not really, because engaging would mean confronting what he'd done. And he wasn't ready for that. He told himself he was being punished for something that wasn't really a crime, that the system had overreacted, that Isaiah had been too sensitive. It was easier that way. Easier than admitting he'd been cruel, that he'd targeted someone weaker. That race had played a role even if he hadn't said the words explicitly. His parents visited every week, brought him commissary items, books, encouragement. His mother cried every time. His father remained stoic, told Matthew to stay strong, that this would be over soon, and then they could move on. Matthew nodded, agreed, but he wondered what moving on would look like, whether he'd ever really be able to. In December, the one-year anniversary of the assembly came and went. Angela marked it quietly. Isaiah didn't mention it, didn't want to. He'd survived it, and that was enough. But that night, Angela found him sitting in the living room, lights off, just sitting. She sat beside him, didn't say anything. After a while, Isaiah spoke. Do you think about it? The assembly? Yeah. Sometimes. Me too. They sat in the silence. And Angela understood that some anniversaries don't need to be acknowledged out loud. They just need to be survived. In January 2018, David Ortiz took on a new case. A family from the South Side. Their daughter had been suspended for defending herself against a bully. The school had applied zero tolerance. No investigation. No consideration of context. Just suspension. David thought about Isaiah's case as he reviewed the file. Thought about how often schools got it wrong. How often they protected the wrong people. And he decided to take the case pro bono. Again. Because someone had to. The legal work didn't pay well. His practice was small. His office still above the diner. But the work mattered. And every time he won a case, or even just forced the system to pay attention, he thought about Angela Brooks. About how she'd refused to let the school dismiss what happened to her son. And he was grateful he'd been able to help. In March 2018, Catherine Wells applied for a job. Administrative assistant at a community center. She submitted her resume, listed her education, her work experience, left off Lincoln Middle School. The hiring manager called her references, then ran a background check. The conviction came up. Misconduct in office. The manager called Catherine, told her they'd decided to go with another candidate. Catherine thanked her, hung up, sat at her kitchen table, and wondered how long the conviction would follow her. The answer she was learning was forever. In May 2018, Monica Reyes prosecuted another hate crime case. This one involved vandalism at a mosque. Graffiti. Broken windows. 3 teenage boys. All white. All claiming it was just a prank. Monica thought about the Holloway case as she prepared her arguments. About how often cruelty hid behind claims of innocence. About how important it was to name it for what it was. She won that case too. The boys were convicted. Sentenced to community service and restitution. Not as strong as the Holloway sentence, but something. And something was better than nothing. In September 2018, Isaiah started his junior year. He was doing better. Not perfect, but better. He'd made friends. Found his footing. Started thinking about college. His guidance counselor asked him what he wanted to study. Computer science, he said. Why? He shrugged. I like solving problems. And computers don't judge you. The counselor smiled. That's a good reason. Isaiah left her office feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the big, overwhelming kind. Just the quiet, steady kind. The kind that says maybe things will be okay. In November 2018, Matthew Holloway was released from custody. He'd served 18 months. His parents picked him up, drove him home. His mother cried with relief. His father shook his hand, told him he was proud he'd gotten through it. Matthew nodded, thanked them. But he didn't feel proud. He felt hollow. The probation requirements began immediately. Check in with his officer. Attend counseling. Complete community service. Register as an offender. Matthew did all of it, but he didn't think about why. He just went through the motions, because that's what compliance looked like. In December 2018, 2 years after the assembly, Angela and Isaiah had dinner together. Just the two of them. She'd made his favorite meal. Spaghetti. Garlic bread. They ate and talked about normal things. School. Friends. His plans for winter break. And for the first time, the conversation felt easy. Not forced. Not waited. Just easy. After dinner, Isaiah helped with the dishes. As they worked, Angela said, "I'm proud of you." For what? For getting through it. For not giving up. Isaiah didn't respond right away. Then, "I had help." Angela smiled. "So did I." They finished the dishes. And the moment passed. But Angela held on to it. Because moments like that, small, quiet, normal, were the ones that mattered most. In early 2019, Principal Donovan announced his retirement. The school district issued a statement. Thanked him for his years of service. Wished him well. No mention of the case. No acknowledgement of the controversy. Just a clean, professional exit. Angela saw the announcement online. She didn't feel satisfaction. Didn't feel vindication. Just noted it. And moved on. Because at a certain point there was nothing left to feel. The system had failed. Then it had corrected. Partially. Imperfectly. And now everyone was moving on. Including her. In June 2019, Isaiah finished his junior year. His grades were strong. He'd been accepted into an advanced computer science program for the summer. A program at the local community college. Free for students who qualified. He was excited. Angela was proud. She helped him pack. Drove him to the first day. Watched him walk into the building. And felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Not because the past was gone. But because the future was possible. In September 2019, Matthew completed his community service. 200 hours. Finished. He'd worked at a food bank. Sorting donations. Stocking shelves. It was mindless work. But it was required. So he did it. His counseling sessions were more difficult. The therapist asked him questions he didn't want to answer. About Isaiah. About race. About why he'd made the choices he did. Matthew gave the answers he thought she wanted to hear. "I was immature. I didn't think about the impact. I've learned from it." The therapist wrote notes. Seemed satisfied. But Matthew knew he was performing. Saying what needed to be said. Whether he believed it was another question. In December 2019, 3 years after the assembly, Isaiah applied to colleges. He applied to 5 schools. 3 in-state. 2 out. His essays were strong. His test scores solid. His recommendations glowing. He didn't write about the case in his essays. Didn't mention it at all. Because he didn't want to be defined by it. Didn't want admissions officers to see him as a victim. He was more than that. And he wanted his application to reflect that. In March 2020, Isaiah received his acceptance letters. 4 out of 5. He'd been accepted to Indiana University. Bloomington. Full ride. Merit-based scholarship. Angela cried when she read the letter. Isaiah smiled. It was happening. He was moving forward. Building something new. And the past, while still there, wasn't holding him back. In May 2020, Isaiah graduated from high school. The ceremony was outdoors. Social distancing because of the pandemic. Masks required. But it was still a ceremony. Still a milestone. Angela sat in her chair. Watched her son walk across the stage. And thought about how far they'd come. From the gymnasium. From the box. From the trial. To this. A graduation. A future. A life that was his to build. When Isaiah received his diploma, he looked at his mother. Smiled behind his mask. And she knew he was okay. Not perfect. Not unmarked. But okay. In August 2020, Matthew Holloway completed his probation. 2 years. No violations. His probation officer signed off. Told him he was free to move on with his life. Matthew thanked him. Left the office. And stood in the parking lot wondering what that meant. Moving on. He still had to register. Every year. The conviction was permanent. The label was permanent. But the restrictions were over. He could move. Travel. Live without checking in. He went home. Told his parents. They were relieved. Hopeful. But Matthew wasn't sure what he felt. He'd done everything the court required. But he didn't feel rehabilitated. He felt compliant. And he wondered if there was a difference. In September 2020, Isaiah started college. He moved into the dorms. Met his roommate. Attended orientation. And for the first time in years he felt anonymous. No one knew his story. No one recognized him. He was just another freshman. And that was exactly what he wanted. His classes were challenging. Computer science. Calculus. English composition. But he liked the challenge. Liked having something to focus on that wasn't the past. He made friends. Joined a study group. Started to build a life that was his. Angela called him once a week. Just to check in. How's it going? Good. Making friends? Yeah. Keeping up with classes? Yeah, Mom. I'm fine. And he was. For the first time in a long time, he really was. In October 2020, Catherine Wells was hired at a nonprofit. Administrative work. The background check had come back. The conviction was noted. But the hiring manager gave her a chance anyway. Everyone deserves a second chance, he said. Catherine almost cried. She took the job, showed up every day, did the work, and tried not to think about what she'd lost. In November 2020, Matthew applied for a job, a warehouse position, night shift. The application asked about criminal history. He checked the box, listed the conviction, expected to be rejected. But a week later they called, offered him the position. He accepted. Started the following Monday. The work was hard, physical, exhausting, but it was work, and that was something. In December 2020, 4 years after the assembly, Angela took Isaiah out for dinner, a nice restaurant, to celebrate the end of his first semester. They sat across from each other, ordered food, talked about his classes, his plans for winter break, and Angela realized something. They were okay. Not unmarked, not unchanged, but okay. The case had shaped them, scarred them, but it hadn't broken them, and that was enough. In early 2021, Judge Diane Mercer presided over a sentencing hearing. Another hate crime case. A 22-year-old who had assaulted someone outside a bar, yelled slurs, caused injury. The defense argued for leniency. First offense, intoxication, a mistake. Judge Mercer listened, then delivered her sentence. This court does not excuse violence, she said, and it does not excuse hatred. You will serve 36 months. The courtroom was silent. Later, a colleague asked her if she always gave such harsh sentences for hate crimes. I give sentences that fit the crime, she said, and I don't let people hide behind excuses. The colleague nodded. Understood. Judge Mercer didn't mention the Holloway case, but it had changed how she approached these matters. Made her less willing to accept that youth or stress or circumstance justified cruelty. And she wasn't apologetic about that. In May 2021, Isaiah finished his freshman year of college. He'd done well. GPA above 3.5. He'd joined a coding club, made solid friends, and started thinking about internships. Angela visited him on move-out day, helped him pack his dorm room. They drove home together, and Isaiah talked the entire drive about his classes, his friends, his plans for the summer. Angela listened and marveled at the change. This was the son she remembered from before. Animated, engaged, present. The weight he'd carried for so long was lifting. Not gone, but lifting. In August 2021, Matthew moved out of his parents' house. He found a small apartment, 1 bedroom, near the warehouse where he worked. His parents helped him move, brought him furniture, stocked his kitchen. His mother cried when they left. His father shook his hand. You're going to be okay, he said. Matthew nodded, hoped it was true, but he wasn't sure. The registry followed him. Every lease application, every background check, every new neighbor who might look him up, was always there. A reminder, a mark he couldn't erase. In September 2021, Isaiah started his sophomore year. He declared his major, computer science. He was doing well, thriving even, and for the first time he allowed himself to imagine a future. Not just survival, but success, a career, a life. He didn't think about the assembly every day anymore. Sometimes weeks went by without it crossing his mind, and when it did, it was more distant, less immediate, a memory instead of a wound. In December 2021, 5 years after the assembly, Angela lit a candle. She did it quietly, alone in her living room, not for mourning, but for acknowledgement. 5 years had passed, and they'd made it. She and Isaiah. They'd survived. And more than that, they'd rebuilt. Slowly, imperfectly, but they'd rebuilt. She blew out the candle and moved on with her evening, because that's what healing looked like. Not forgetting, just continuing. In early 2022, David Ortiz took on another education case. A student with disabilities, denied accommodations, suspended for behavior related to his disability. David filed a complaint with the state, argued discrimination. The school district settled, agreed to provide the accommodations, agreed to training. David didn't charge the family. His practice still barely broke even, but the work mattered. And every time he won, he thought about the families he couldn't help, The ones who didn't have access to an attorney, who didn't know their rights, who accepted what the system told them. And he wished there were more of him. More people willing to fight. In May 2022, Isaiah finished his sophomore year. He'd secured an internship for the summer. A tech company in Indianapolis. Paid position. Real experience. Angela was proud. Isaiah was excited. And for the first time the future felt real. Not abstract. Not distant. But real. In August 2022, Monica Reyes accepted a promotion. She was named the director of the Civil Rights Division in the Attorney General's office. More responsibility. More cases. More pressure. But she'd earned it. And she was ready. At her first staff meeting, she told her team something she'd learned over the years. These cases aren't just about legal arguments. They're about people. Real people whose lives have been harmed. Don't ever forget that. The staff nodded. And Monica felt confident she was leaving the work in good hands. In November 2022, Judge Diane Mercer announced her retirement. She'd served on the bench for 20 years. Presided over thousands of cases. Made countless decisions. In her retirement speech, she said something that surprised some people. The cases I remember most aren't the high-profile ones. They're the ones where I had to decide whether to look away or lean in. And I'm proud I chose to lean in. Someone asked her to elaborate. She declined. But later, in a private conversation with a colleague, she mentioned the Holloway case. That case reminded me why I became a judge, she said. To ensure that everyone gets a fair hearing. Even when it's uncomfortable. The colleague thanked her for her service. And Judge Mercer retired knowing she'd done her job. In December 2022, 6 years after the assembly, Isaiah came home for winter break. He'd just finished his fall semester. Junior year. His grades were strong. His internship had turned into a job offer for after graduation. He was on track. Angela made his favorite dinner. They sat together. Talked about his plans. And Isaiah said something he hadn't said in years. "I'm happy, Mom." Angela smiled. "I can see that. I didn't think I would be. After everything. But you are." "Yeah, I am." They finished dinner. And Angela felt something she'd been afraid to feel for a long time. Pride. Not just in what Isaiah had accomplished, but in how he'd done it. With resilience. With strength. With grace. In early 2023, Catherine Wells was promoted. She'd been with the nonprofit for over 2 years. Proven herself. Earned trust. The executive director called her into his office. Offered her a supervisory role. Catherine was stunned. "Are you sure?" "Yes. You've done excellent work. And you deserve this." She accepted. And for the first time since her conviction, she felt something other than shame. She felt hope. In May 2023, Isaiah finished his junior year. 1 year left. Then graduation. Then the job he'd been offered. Then real life. He was ready. Angela visited him at school. Took him out for dinner. "How are you feeling about next year?" she asked. "Good. Nervous. But good. You should be proud of yourself." "I am. Kind of. Kind of." Isaiah smiled. "I'm working on it." Angela laughed. "That's fair." They finished dinner. And drove back to campus. And Angela realized that this, right here, was what success looked like. Not perfection. Just progress. In September 2023, Matthew registered again. It was routine now. Annual requirement. He went to the local police station. Filled out the forms. Confirmed his address. Left. No one said anything. No one had to. The process said it all. He drove home. Went to work. And tried not to think about how many more years he'd have to do this. The answer was indefinite. And that was something he'd have to live with. In December 2023, 7 years after the assembly, Angela received a letter. From the school district. It was addressed to her and Isaiah. She opened it. Inside was a formal apology. Written on district letterhead. Signed by the new superintendent. It acknowledged the failures in Isaiah's case. Expressed regret. And thanked them for their courage in pursuing justice. Angela read it twice. Then showed it to Isaiah when he came home for break. He read it. Shrugged. "It's something, I guess." "Is it enough?" "I don't know. Nothing would be enough. But it's something." Angela folded the letter. Put it away. And they moved on with their holiday. In May 2024, Isaiah graduated from college. Bachelor's degree in computer science. Honors. Job offer already in hand. Angela attended the ceremony. Sat in the stands. Watched him walk across the stage. And cried. Not from sadness. But from relief. From pride. From the overwhelming sense that they'd made it. After the ceremony, Isaiah found her. Hugged her. "We did it, Mom." "You did it." "No. We did it." And Angela knew he was right. This hadn't been just his fight. It had been theirs. Together. In August 2024, Isaiah started his first full-time job. Software developer. Good salary. Benefits. A future. He moved into his own apartment. Small. But his. Angela helped him move in. Brought him dishes and towels and advice. When they finished unpacking, Isaiah made coffee. They sat on his couch. "This feels surreal," he said. "In a good way?" "Yeah. In a good way." Angela smiled. "You've earned it." "I know. But sometimes I still can't believe it's real." "It's real." They finished their coffee. And Angela drove home. And thought about how far her son had come. From the scared 13-year-old in the gymnasium. To this. A college graduate. A professional. A man building a life. She was proud. And she was grateful. In October 2024, Monica Reyes gave a speech at a legal conference. The topic was hate crime prosecution. She talked about the challenges. The importance of thorough investigation. The need to look beyond explicit language to understand motive. She didn't mention the Holloway case by name. But she referenced it. "One of the most important cases I prosecuted involved a young defendant who never used a slur. But the pattern of behavior told the story. And the jury understood that. Because bias isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. But it's still bias." The audience nodded. Took notes. And Monica hoped some of them would carry that lesson into their own work. In December 2024, 8 years after the assembly, Angela Brooks sat on her porch. It was cold. But she wanted the air. She thought about the past 8 years. The trial. The conviction. The sentence. The rebuilding. And she realized something. She'd forgiven the system. Not for what it had done. But for what it was. Imperfect. Flawed. But capable of correction. She hadn't forgiven Matthew. That wasn't her job. But she'd stopped thinking about him. Stopped wondering if he'd learned anything. Because it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was Isaiah. And Isaiah was okay. Better than okay. Thriving. And that was enough. In late December 2024, Isaiah visited his mother for Christmas. They had dinner together. Opened modest gifts. Watched a movie. And at one point Isaiah said, "You know what's weird?" "What?" "I'm happy. Like really happy. And I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that." Angela's eyes filled. "I'm so glad you can." "Me too." They finished the movie. And Isaiah fell asleep on the couch. Angela covered him with a blanket. Looked at him. And thought about everything they'd survived. The cruelty. The dismissals. The fight. The verdict. And the long, slow process of healing. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been fair. But they'd made it. And that was what mattered. On December 26, 2024, Angela woke early. Made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. And wrote in a journal she'd started years ago. She didn't write often. Just on certain days. Days that mattered. She wrote, 8 years ago my son was humiliated in front of his entire school. And I thought the world had ended. But it didn't. We fought back. We demanded justice. And we got it. Not perfectly. Not completely. But we got it. And Isaiah is okay. He's more than okay. He's thriving. And I'm proud. Not just of him. But of us. For refusing to accept what the system told us to accept. For insisting that what happened mattered. For believing that justice was possible. It wasn't easy. And there were times I wanted to give up. But I'm glad I didn't. Because he deserved better. And now he has it. She closed the journal. Finished her coffee. And started her day. Because that's what life was. Not a story with a neat ending. Not a resolution where everything was fixed. Just a continuation. A series of days. Some harder than others. But all of them carrying the weight and the lessons of what had come before. Isaiah Brooks was okay. Matthew Holloway was living with consequences. The system had been forced to change. And the people who had fought, Angela, David, Monica, Judge Mercer, had left their mark. Not because they were heroes, but because they refused to look away. And in the end, that refusal was everything. Because justice doesn't happen by accident. It happens when someone insists on it. When someone refuses to let cruelty hide. When someone says, "This matters and I will not let you forget." Angela Brooks had said that. And the world had listened. Not perfectly. Not completely. But it had listened. And Isaiah was okay. And that was enough. It had to be. The end.